Number 10. Alpha Flight. This might be a controversial way to start off this list, but I truly do believe that Alpha Flight can be more powerful than the Avengers team, especially if we're talking about consistent teamwork, which the Avengers members sometimes struggle with due to, well, butting heads with each other. I mean, people on the Avengers have straight up killed their other teammates before. That is just a fact. I mean, I did a whole list about the amount of times Iron Man has been basically killed by his teammates, and after talking it over with Andrew, it seems like Alpha Flight also has a better system in place for making sure their team not only works smoothly, but also that members are well trained before even earning their place on the team due to the existence of both Beta Flight and Gamma Flight, which were initially used as training teams. Although Gamma Flight has kind of become something else in recent years, but yes. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by giving this video a little like? Click that thumbs up. Number 9. Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns is basically Marvel's main magical team. At least currently that's who we got. Midnight Suns typically deal with threats that are more mystical or supernatural in nature. They were brought together initially by Doctor Strange to fight against Lilith and her small army of demonic offspring known as the Lilin, which, I mean, of course this team would be brought together by Doctor Strange, right? Each member of the original team roster had interacted with the Lilin before, which was what tied them all together. Team members and leaders have included Doctor Strange, Wong, Blade, Morbius, Magic, Nico Minoru, Wolverine, Zoe Laveau, Kushala, Dr. Voodoo, Elsa Bloodstone, multiple Ghost Riders, Hannibal King, Hellstrom, Iron Fist, Man-Thing, Jennifer Kale, Ben Reilly, Victoria Montesi, and Werewolf by Night. It's a lot of supernatural and mystical people. Number 8. Web Warriors. The Web Warriors are a fantastic multiversal team that spun out of the events of Spider-Verse. But even before they existed in the comics, they and the Spider-Verse were inspired by the team-ups of multiversal Spider-Man in the 90s Spider-Man animated series. The Web Warriors were brought together by the multiversal threat of the Inheritors, who hunted down various alternate Spider people, known as Spider Totems, across the Marvel multiverse. After they were defeated during the Spider-Verse event and the dust had settled, the Web Warriors were created to defend those worlds, who were left afterwards without a hero. Considering how powerful Peter Parker's Spider-Man is, I think you can understand how a team made up of various alternate versions of the character would be off the charts when it comes to their power level. I mean, Spider-Man himself is pretty crazy, like a team of Spider-Men. I wish we had an Avengers team that was actually just like different Spider people. That could be pretty cool. Number 7. Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four, despite being often smaller in number, though they have expanded beyond that number over the years, is still mightier, I'd say, than the Avengers. But I also feel like that's to be expected. After all, the FF were one of the first Marvel teams and are referred to fondly as Marvel's first family. So if anything, I consider them kind of like the first team. The Fantastic Four usually is made up of the 4 initial friends and relatives who are forever changed by exposure to cosmic rays during their first voyage out into space. At least that's the original origin story. The team has had countless heroes join their ranks here and there over the years. Well, you know Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, and The Thing. Some other members on the FF roster have included the Hulk, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, Storm, She-Hulk, Nova, Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur, Crystal, and Black Panther, among others. Number 6. The Quiet Council. They aren't really a team of superheroes, but the title of this video is simply Marvel Teams More Powerful Than the Avengers, and the Quiet Council, I would consider them to be a team still. They're a team of folks in the Marvel universe. Granted, their team is more about protecting their power and their nation of Krakoa, but hey, I think it still counts. The Krakoan Quiet Council as such is composed of not just mutant superheroes, but mutant villains as well, as Krakoa is said to be a place for all mutants, where past misdeeds are forgiven in the name of creating a better tomorrow and a safe haven for all mutants. Current members include some of the most prominent, iconic, and powerful mutants in all of existence: Destiny, Hope Summers, Storm, Exodus, Professor X, Emma Frost, Mr. Sinister, Captain Kate Pryde, Mystique, and Sebastian Shaw. Formerly, the Council also featured such additional powerhouses as Apocalypse, Magneto, and Jean Grey, besides. Number 5. X-Men. I mean, Of course I was going to put the X-Men on this list. Y'all know me, I'm a huge mutant fan. And the premier mutant team in the comics, of course, is the X-Men. I've also loved that over the years the X-Men has become more of a global team than just necessarily an American one. Unlike the Avengers, which has tended to remain mostly American in terms of their prominent team members throughout the years. I mean, most of the people on the Avengers tend to be American, not always, but I feel like the X-Men is a little bit more global in that regard. Although they do also have a lot of American members. I mean, based in New York. It's Marvel Comics. X-Men's current and previous lineup have also been exceptionally strong, and even the OG X-Men roster featured some mutants who are still considered the most powerful even today, and who are still around, of course, in the comics even today. The current roster features Cyclops, Firestar, Forge, Iceman, Havoc, Magic, Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl, and Synch. Honestly, Synch is also alone just so amazing, and has taken the meaning of teamwork to another level, I think. Synch. Such an underrated character that now is getting his time in the spotlight. Number 4. Eternals. The Eternals are another team that deserve more love when it comes to the comics and when it comes to their powers. They're a team made up of literal immortal beings who are extremely resistant to dying, but up until recently anyways, even if they did die, they would actually quickly return to life thanks to the machine which rebuilds and resurrects them and is integrated, or was integrated, with the planet Earth, which is actually itself a living mechanism of sorts. The Eternals recently had a killer comic series written by Kieran Gillen that I would also highly recommend you check out. This is a series that will make you a fan if you weren't already. The Eternals all also possess a unique power comparable to a powerful ability of mutant villain Apocalypse. They can manipulate and alter their own molecular structure, having complete control of it, and some, like Circe, can even manipulate matter in general, be it organic or inorganic. Number 3. God Squad. The God Squad was brought together to combat another group of gods, the Skrull Pantheon. The team made their first appearance in Incredible Hercules issue 117, but while Hercules would become their leader, they were actually brought together by Athena's command. Although she didn't serve on the team, a bunch of other super powerful individuals and gods did. With Hercules leading, their roster over time also included Thor, Circe, the Silver Surfer, Ajax, Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, Mikaboshi, Adam, Galactus, and Venus. The God Squad only made a few appearances, but I still think they're a super cool team, and I'm still disappointed we didn't get to see them in Thor Love and Thunder. I was kinda hoping. God Squad, but alas. Number 2. The Annihilators. The Annihilators are an insane cosmic team, and you know how I feel about the cosmic world of Marvel. It's probably one of the most powerful areas. The Annihilators first appeared in Thanos Imperative Devastation issue number 1, and were created by Dan Abnett, Andy Lanning, and Miguel Sepulveda, during a time when the Guardians were getting a refresh by Abnett and Lanning in the comics. The team was actually inspired by Star-Lord himself, who had an idea for a truly badass team of galactic Guardians, which Cosmo put into action. The team has featured Beta Ray Bill, Silver Surfer, Gladiator, Icon, Quasar, and Ronan the Accuser. At one point they used their powers to combine two suns together and prevented them from going supernova. So yeah, that's the power level that we're talking about. Number 1. The Defenders. I feel like the Defenders is a team that is often forgotten, but is randomly like one of the best superhero teams we've ever seen from Marvel. Perhaps this also has to do with the fact that none of its members ever really wanted to join or be there, at least not initially. The Defenders was the name given initially to the reluctant team up of the Hulk, Namor, and Doctor Strange, with Strange acting as the de facto leader of the team. Also, just having Doctor Strange as the leader of any team makes it pretty impressive, hence why the Midnight Suns are also on here. When it comes to Avengers teams, he tends to be more elusive, and even solo, he's known for being a powerhouse, so combine him with other powerhouses on a team, albeit ones, you know, in different categories like the Hulk and Namor, and you can see how this team becomes seemingly unstoppable. In fact, I feel like the fact that each of these heroes, you know, kind of has their own thing going on is what makes the Defenders so great. And they've also had a lot of other people join them throughout the years that have also been insane. As long as they all happen to be working together, the Defenders is a pretty great team, which of course, especially in the beginning, wasn't always the case. But hey, they figured it out. Number 10. Gamma Corps. Not to be confused with Gamma Flight, the space program, or the other Gamma Flight, Alpha Flight training team. The Gamma Corps are actually made up of various different Gamma mutates, who basically were initially brought together to be used in hunting down the Hulk, believing him to be responsible for their fates and their mutations. They later learned, however, the truth and ended up turning on the Illuminati as a result. Team members included General Riker, their initial leader, Timothy Wilkerson, known as Prodigy, Gray, Griffin, Mr. Gideon, and Mess. While they were rescued by the Hulk from a Hulk AI and later depowered, I would say that at their height they could stand a chance against a more classic Avengers roster. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by giving us a thumbs up? Number 9. Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts might not be as good at teamwork in some cases, but they are definitely more interesting than the Avengers when it comes to their story, and despite being initially made up secretly of a group of villains led by Baron Zemo, the public even came to accept them as heroes. Over the years, their lineup has changed dramatically, and currently they are actually more of a mishmash of like less heroic folks and more heroic folks, although the fact remains that the Thunderbolts has always remained a more heroic, at least at heart, or at least anti-hero based team. One of their current members also happens to be Spectrum, aka Monica Rambeau, who is known for packing a punch. Number 8. Titans 3. Titans 3 is a group that is similar but different to another one I had on part 1 of my list. It is basically the Defenders, sort of, but also may predate the Defenders, I believe, in terms of their appearance. The Titans 3 only appeared in a couple of issues of Submariner back in the 70s, making their first appearance in issue number 34 and their last in issue number 35. This team was led by Namor the Submariner and was brought together to save the world, as many great superhero teams have been brought together in the past. Joining Namor were the Hulk and the Silver Surfer, so no Doctor Strange here, but still a very powerful team I think, even with only 3 of them. Number 7. Star Masters. Probably not a team you get to hear about often, I'd think, on YouTube, so let me get you up to speed here. Star Masters were brought together by the accusation that Quasar was guilty of murder, having believed to have massacred basically a bunch of people on a starship. Those that made up the team were the ones who believed him to be innocent. I also just love Wendell Vaughn and feel like we don't really get to talk about him too much on the channel for how powerful he is. Probably because Wendell, aka Quasar, isn't super prominent in the comics anymore these days, especially not Wendell as Quasar, because now we also have Avril. However, Wendell has appeared in the Guardians of the Galaxy series in recent years. While Quasar was obviously on the team, so was Beta Ray Bill, Silver Surfer, Morphex, and Zenith. After Quasar was proven innocent, the team became more focused on maintaining peace throughout the cosmos, basically like OP cosmic peacekeepers, which I also just love as a team idea. Number 6. Transformers. Well, it's weird to think of the Transformers as a Marvel team, since, you know, they are with Hasbro. Marvel also happens to be the place where they kinda got their comic book start. And recently, IDW did lose the rights to the comics for Transformers. Although it's lucky for Marvel, and I do love their work, it is a little sad because I was also actually interested in the IDW Transformers stuff, which I guess I could go back and read. Or well, I guess they can't reprint it, so I'd have to find old stuff. Oh well. I'm sure there's still lots of awesome stuff in store in the future for Transformers comics, no matter who the rights belong to, because they're just a really cool property. And either way, the team will remain unstoppable. I'm still waiting for an Avengers vs Transformers event, so hopefully that is something we could also see in the future. Number 5. Multiversal Masters of Evil. The Multiversal Masters of Evil were actually powerful enough to defeat the Avengers. So this one, actually the proof is in the pudding in this case. The Multiversal Masters of Evil were actually powerful enough to defeat the Avengers, or rather the Avengers of 1 million BC, aka the prehistoric Avengers, but still, even when they went back in the day, the first Avengers were still some of the most powerful people on or off the planet of Earth, so I feel like that's still really impressive. I know before, in part 1, some people in the comments wanted to know which Avengers team we were comparing these other teams to. We're like, how can you compare them if you're not telling us the parameters, Amanda? Well, you know, I don't really have a lot of time to go through the parameters, but what I will say is I'm more thinking of these teams in comparisons generally speaking, so meaning any and all versions of the team can really be contrasted to each other. No specific parameters per se, although I am leaning more towards like classic Avengers, I guess when I'm thinking of it. These are more teams that would just be considered more powerful than at least one of the Avengers rosters. And we already know the Multiversal Masters of Evil succeeded there because they already beat the prehistoric Avengers. The Multiversal Masters of Evil are different from the standard team, and they actually include Doom Supreme, King Killmonger, Black Skull, Dark Phoenix, Ghost Goblin, and Kid Thanos. Number 4. Squadron Supreme. Squadron Supreme is kind of like Marvel's version of the Justice League. And I know what you're thinking, but wait a minute, Amanda. I thought the Avengers was like Marvel's version of the Justice League. Well, yes and no. The Avengers team doesn't really have powerhouses in the same way as the Justice League does, and Squadron Supreme kinda does that a little bit better than the Avengers does, if we're comparing. Marvel even went so far as to rename the alternate reality version of them that also appeared in 2021's Heroes Reborn event the Squadron Supreme of America. Get it? like the Justice League of America. Their ranks typically include Nighthawk, Dr. Spectrum, Blur, Hyperion, and Warrior Woman or Princess Power, whatever name she's going by, aka Zarda Shelton. She goes by both depending on which version of her we're talking about. Number 3. The Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club might not be one of the first picks you have when you think of a team that can take on and defeat the Avengers, but you know me, I'm always thinking about mutants and mutant teams. And it is important to note that before the Phoenix became a member of the Avengers team, and before the Phoenix Force was retconned to be a part of Thor's origins, it was well known for its attachment to the X-Men, and specifically one mutant in particular who was a member, Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl. In fact, the Phoenix Force is an entity that was created by Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum, and one of the first places where the Phoenix Force became fully unhinged was during the Phoenix's time at the Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club was once a well-known villainous organization that was committed to using wealth and influence to manipulate and eventually conquer the world, sort of. Currently, the organization has been rebranded though, and presents as being a business that leans more towards heroic pursuits, but still often profitable pursuits. Number 2. Nova Corps. When you think about it, the Nova Corps, despite having been destroyed by the Universal Church of Truth, is probably one of the most powerful organizations or groups likely in the universe. Originally, they were known as Xandar's Line of Defense, but as they grew, they ended up expanding the area under their protection, eventually extending to the whole of the Andromeda Galaxy, and I mean at least part of the Milky Way, as Earth also fell under their jurisdiction, where they, decided to take it under their wing. And while yes, as of Annihilation Scourge, they may be gone right now, with only Richard Rider as Nova surviving, it's more than likely that we will eventually see them return in the comics at some point. And usually when we do, I mean, they're just really powerful, so we should acknowledge that. Number 1. Elders of the Universe. The Elders of the Universe are some of the oldest beings to exist out in the universe. In fact, they are so old that in some cases their origins remain a mystery to us to this day, lost to time. They don't always work together, preferring sometimes to kind of do their own thing, but when they do end up joining forces for anything, they're also pretty unstoppable. They have worked together to take on Galactus and were for a while holders of the Infinity Stones back when they were known as the Infinity Gems in the comics. And in fact, I feel like if they came together to protect those, maybe Thanos would have never taken them? I don't know. Among the Elders of the Universe are the Challenger, the Champion Trico Slatterus, Ego, the Living Planet, the In-Between, the Collector, the Grand Master, the Profiteer, and Lady Karina Korvac, the wife of one of the Avengers' greatest enemies, Korvac. There's also a lot more of them out there than we know, which means if they were to all assemble, it would likely be a scary time for just about everyone else in the Marvel Universe. It would be pretty scary. Number 10. Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were first introduced in their own comic book series in Dark Avengers issue number 1. Not everyone is a fan of them, because while they're kind of Avengers, they're also kind of go against a lot of the things that the original team stood for. The Dark Avengers are led by Norman Osborn, who gets to make his own organization, Hammer, to safeguard the world's safety following the crumbling of S.H.I.E.L.D. and after his victory against the Skrull Queen, whose death was brought about by Osborn and was also televised, making him a worldwide hero in the eyes of many, despite the fact that, yeah, he was still definitely a villain. Still, although this team was comprised of villains, they did aim to do good things, just in their own way. In truth, they became more a team of anti-heroes than anything, with just a dash of villainous escapades organized by their leader, Osborn, who at this point went by Iron Patriot. Sort of like the Iron Man of this Dark Avengers crew. Number 9. Avengers Academy. Avengers Academy was a series that replaced the Avengers The Initiative series. As that series ended, this one began. The Avengers Academy team was a group of superpowered youths who were selected to be trained as new Avengers. Although originally the teens thought that they had been selected due to the promise that they showed, it was later revealed that they had been selected because of the great risk that they would ultimately become villains. In fact, 6 of the teens were actually working for Norman Osborn during the Dark Avengers Hammer Dark Reign days, and likely could have ended up being trained by him to become Dark Avengers, should that whole situation have continued to play out. However, when the Avengers found out about them, they instead decided to create the Avengers Academy in an attempt to repurpose and redeem those youths. So basically took them in themselves. Hank Pym acted as the headmaster of this academy, while Tigra, Justice, Quicksilver, and Speedball took on roles as teachers. Number 8. Secret Avengers. This team operated for 3 years in the comics. It was led by Commander Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter. After the dissolution of Hammer and the Dark Avengers, Steve was now left to decide what should come after. Instead of reforming S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Avengers, he decided to secure global safety through the use of various smaller Avengers teams. Secret Avengers was one of those teams that he himself led and was a black ops unit used for covertly dealing with the problems that Osborn, Hammer, and the Dark Avengers had left behind and created during their reign. Members included Black Widow, Ant-Man, Beast, Moon Knight, War Machine, Nova, and a Valkyrie named Brunhilde. They were eventually disbanded by Hawkeye following their fight against the Descendants. But man, was it a fun and weird run. Seriously, if you haven't checked out Secret Avengers, you should maybe do it. It's pretty strange. I kinda love it. Number 7. Mighty Avengers. Granted, there is more than one Mighty Avengers team, but for the purpose of this list, we're talking about Luke Cage's Mighty Avengers. This team of Avengers formed to look after the Earth after the main Avengers team was forced to roll out when the Builders threatened the entire universe. Yeah, that was a thing. Remember that? During the Avengers' absence, Thanos returned to Earth and the Mighty Avengers stepped in to protect their people and their planet. The team was led by Luke Cage and included such heroes as Spectrum, White Tiger, and Blue Marvel, as well as Superior Spider-Man, who at one point attempted to overtake leadership of the team, fighting Luke Cage for it. Number 6. AIM. I know what you're thinking. AIM? Wait, but what? AIM was originally the villainous organization of genius-level scientists, also known as Advanced Idea Mechanics, who aimed, get it, aimed, to overthrow the government and rule the world using technological advancements. So what are you talking about, Amanda? How can they be an Avengers team? Well, this organization eventually was taken over by mutant and hero Sunspot, Roberto da Costa. Sunspot renamed the organization Avengers Idea Mechanics and set out to reclaim and reform it. He used the organization for good, filling it with more noble, brilliant minds who developed tech to help with Sunspot's new Avengers rescue missions. Roberto basically merged his new Avengers team with AIM to create this new technologically advanced Avengers team. Previously, that new Avengers team was actually known as the Multiversal Avengers, and originally they were all about discovering the reason behind the gradual disintegration of the multiverse. Number 5. All New All Different Avengers. This was both its own new team of Avengers in a series, as well as being known as the name for kind of an entire Marvelverse soft relaunch, including a variety of spin-offs that took place in 2015, known as the All New All Different verse. This relaunch included a variety of series, including one of my faves, All New Wolverine. But for the purpose of this list, we'll be talking about the All New All Different Avengers founding team and the individual comic series itself that was about them. Following Secret Wars, this All New All Different Avengers team was formed. Originally it was comprised of Iron Man, Sam Wilson, who was Captain America at the time, Miss Marvel aka Kamala Khan, Miles Morales as Spider-Man, young Sam Alexander as Nova, Vision, and Jane Foster's Thor. Iron Man would act as their leader, but this team wouldn't even officially refer to themselves as Avengers until the very end of issue number 3 of their series. This was a refresh on the Avenger team, one that had no tower, no funding, and wasn't officially even recognized yet. Over time they would become more established, but the all new all different team would only exist as it was for 15 issues, up until the events of Civil War II. Number 4. A-Force. The first all-female team of Avengers. It took us over 50 years, but eventually we got there. This team had 2 self-titled comic series, though sadly both were very short. The team was originally led by She-Hulk, and its members would include Captain Marvel, Medusa, Singularity, Dazzler, and Nico Minoru. A-Force originally took their name from the name for the defenders of the matriarchal nation of Arcadia on Battleworld, where She-Hulk reigned as a baroness. The team was created during the Secret Wars event involving Emperor Doom's Battleworld, and would continue to exist up until the events of Civil War II, when She-Hulk was put into a coma. It's kinda how that whole thing starts. Well, it's part of the start anyways. Number 3. US Avengers. The US Avengers is a strange and eclectic team, but also a fun and patriotic one. They worked alongside S.H.I.E.L.D. but were also considered independent of the organization. This team actually coincided with another Avenger related one that I mentioned earlier, Avengers Idea Mechanics, the new AIM. Sunspot, who was operating under the popular alias of Citizen 5, led and created this team. It was comprised of a quirky yet popular group of heroes, including Robert Maverick's Red Hulk, Cannonball, Tony Ho's Iron Patriot, Squirrel Girl, Pod, and the time-displaced daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones from an alternate future known as Danielle Cage, aka her alternate universe's Captain America. I love Danielle Cage, she's pretty cool. Number 2. Occupy Avengers. I almost said Octopus Avengers. which is not a thing. But maybe it should be a thing, I don't know, they could be a team, they're all octopuses. This series and Avengers spin-off was a small one. It consisted mainly of Hawkeye and followed his adventures on a path for redemption following the events of Civil War II. Let's not forget that it was Hawkeye's arrow that was deemed responsible for the death of Bruce Banner, although Banner had asked that Hawkeye mercy kill him should it be necessary. Although he was acquitted of all murder charges, Hawkeye still felt guilty and sought to make things right. His way of doing this? A more grassroots approach to heroism involving basically community outreach. Clint focused on more real-world problems that threatened people, like fixing up Santa Rosa, New Mexico's water supply. During the run of Occupy Avengers, Hawkeye would be joined by other heroes such as Red Wolf and Nightshade, who would join him on his quest. Number 1. Savage Avengers. This ruthless team of Avengers is basically one of the newest anti-hero Avenger teams to form, and is more anti-hero than our number 10 spot, the Dark Avengers, because all the members are still definitely the good guys, but are also known for being violent killers as well. This team was formed out of a team-up involving Wolverine and Conan the Barbarian. It consists of Elektra, Dr. Voodoo, formerly known as Brother Voodoo, Elektra, Punisher, and Venom. The team was assembled to combat the combined threat of spellcasters and spell traders from Conan's world and Marvel's main continuity evil secret ninja organization known as The Hand. Number 10. Deadly Genesis. We can talk about different X-Men and mutant teams here, but I'd also like to touch on some of the rosters as well that you may have forgotten about. This one might be due to selective memory loss, or it could just be because you haven't read the story yet. We are talking here about the X-Men Deadly Genesis limited series, which revealed the next team sent into Krakoa after the X-Men team we know went missing. This team wasn't necessarily a bad one at all. In fact, all of these mutants are kinda super powerful, but they were all basically introduced in this short series, which didn't really help to make us care as much about them as we could have. All in all, this story just had a very early 2000s feel to it. Not that that's a bad thing. The Deadly Genesis X-Men team were a group of kids that Moira McTaggart was trying to help out. She didn't even really see them as students, and then Charles recruited them and turned them into X-Men. The team consisted of Sway, Petra, Vulcan, and Darwin, who have all recently reappeared in the Dawn of X line, in case you were wondering where they made their first appearance. Number 9. Xavier's Security Enforcers. One that we might forget about every now and then is the mutant team that Bishop originally belonged to from the alternate dystopian future that he hails from. I believe this Earth is 1191, but I could be mistaken on that. Didn't even write down my Earth number. Bothers me. This mutant team is known as the XSE, which stands for Xavier's Security Enforcers. If you know Bishop well and you're a big fan, you likely know this team well, but for those who are new to the character, you might not know about this group of enforcers. The point of the team that Bishop was part of was to preserve the long-dead Professor Charles Xavier's dream, where mutants and humans could exist in harmony, living peacefully together. Bishop has even been known to wield specific future equipment, which he got from XSE, although we haven't seen them in a while. All members of the team wear their mutant tattoo brands like a badge of honor, and the members have included Randall, Malcolm, and Bishop's sister Shard, among others over the years. Before we hop into our number 8 spot, I just want to thank all of you for being here and give you a quick reminder to click that like if you are enjoying this video. It really does help us out. Number 8. Nasty Boys. You might remember the original villainous Marauders team, but do you remember Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys? Don't worry if you have, because I will never let you forget. While both the Marauders and Nasty Boys teams are villainous teams, I couldn't have an obscure mutant team list and not seize the opportunity to remind you all of the Nasty Boys. So here we are. I also just love this name for the team. I personally always read Mr. Sinister with like the most outlandish, flamboyant, yet manipulative pseudo-English accent. So for me, it's very fitting that he decided to name his team this. Nasty Boys, so perfect. It fits perfectly with the voice that I have for him in my mind. The Nasty Boys were the team that came after the Marauders. Instead of Gambit being involved in the team, Multiple Man was the generally heroic mutant who got involved. Originally, the team saw Ruckus as leader, with Slab, Gorgeous George, Ramrod, and Hairbag making up the roster. Gorgeous George even resurfaced in Dawn of X more recently. Yay! I might be the only one, but I'm still kinda hoping that the Nasty Boys as well will make a return. Bring them back. Bring them back. Number 7. Outback. When it comes to X-Men rosters as teams, one of the best but shortest running roster is the Outback team. This era for the X-Men team lasted less than 25 issues, but was still so good that people still talk about it today. Now, if you missed this one and you've never heard of it, it's one that you actually probably should read. Not one of my silly points, more one of my serious and beloved forgotten teams on this list. The team started off in issue 229 of Uncanny X-Men, with Storm, Wolverine, Rogue, Colossus, Dazzler, Longshot, Havoc, and Psylocke on it. We'd also see Jubilee introduced during this roster's time together. The Outback team is noted as being one of the best rosters for the X-Men when it comes to having a group who truly feel like outsiders. Also, you get to enjoy the Inferno story in this run, which is bizarre and magical, so you're welcome for that. Number 6. X-Corps. No, I'm not talking about the X Corporation, which has yet to come out, but is still coming our way. Thank goodness. I thought that book was going to be firmly cancelled, but fortunately it has been revived. I'm so ready for X Corporation, let's go. When we talk about X-Corps, we are talking about Banshee's team. He formed this team after Generation X disbanded, and most of the team were composed of that era of mutants. This team was made up of former villains turned heroes and was created to act as a police force basically for the mutant community. Joining Banshee were the Blob, Avalanche, Fever Pitch, Jubilee, Husk, and M, aka Monet. The X-Men team actually did not approve of this team's creation and actually attempted to get Banshee to disband it. In the end, Mystique infiltrated the team and liberated its members, especially the villains, who were being manipulated into behaving heroically by Mastermind under Banshee's orders. Number 5. Extreme X-Men. This X-Men roster marked the return of Chris Claremont to the X-Men in a full-time capacity. Extreme X-Men Volume 1 is a series that started in 2001 and ran till 2004. It was a team that featured my girl Rogue as the leader, woohoo, which you know I'm all about. The original Extreme X-Men roster also featured Beast, Psylocke, Bishop, Storm, Sage, and Thunderbird on the team. Lifeguard, Gambit, and Slipstream were also added to the mix throughout. This team was originally brought together to find Destiny's premonition-filled diaries, but of course along the way was distracted by many other imminent threats. As you do when you're on an X team. Number 4. Generation Hope. This one is from the 2010 series Generation Hope and was under Cyclops' banner ultimately following the events of Regenesis. Though the team itself was led by mutant messiah Hope Summers, and its roster consisted of No Girl, Pixie, Primal, Sebastian Shaw, Transonic, Velocidad, and Zero at that time. Though originally Hope's team started pre-Regenesis as just being 5 mutants including Hope herself, with Velocidad, Oya, Primal, and Transonic on the team. The team was a search and rescue group who were brought together as they were acknowledged as being 4 of the 5 lights on Cerebra. Hope basically triggered the rebirth of the mutant gene, activating these mutants. The 5th light was what they sought and kind of why they came together, heading to Tokyo, Japan. Zero was the mutant they sought, who would eventually join the team, although originally would be antagonist. Number 3. X-People. You probably forgot about this team just because their name is, well, super forgettable, but they are actually from a very memorable alternate universe, the MC2, or also known as Alternate Earth 982. This Earth is the home of the beloved Mayday Parker, aka Spider-Girl, now known as Spider-Woman. But you know what's not so memorable from that universe? Their version of the X-Men. I mean, I get that X-People is meant to be gender neutral, more inclusive, but is that really the best name they could come up with? There has to be something that isn't X-Men that is better than that. I mean, I know there is because we have dozens of other X teams with the letter X in them that are way more catchy than X-People. Because of the Earth it is set in, X-People is a team of originally younger mutants who are now older and taking on the role of leaders, mentors, and teachers. Actually, here Jubilee is the team leader, with her core team roster including Simeon, Angry Eagle, Torque, and Spanner. Number 2. Factor 3. Factor 3? That sounds like some kind of toothpaste. This is another villainous team composed of mutants but led by an alien known as Mutant Master. You might not remember it because it was only around for a few issues and also first appeared way early on in X-Men issue 28 back in 1967. This team popped up a few times and would often force mutants into doing their bidding, often mind-controlling Banshee to attempt to kidnap or help kidnap Professor X. What a wacky time it was. Fortunately, in issue 39, Factor 3 was defeated for good and hasn't bothered the X-Men since. so we haven't seen them for a really long time. Number 1. Lightning Force. This X-Men team comes to us admittedly from an alternate reality, which might be why you've never heard of it before. But once you learn about them, you'll likely wish they had remained forgotten. Lightning Force is an X-Men team that we come across in the Exiles, who themselves belong to Earth 597. They are basically the alternate Excalibur team from their reality, a reality where the Axis won World War II. I think you know where we're going with this. Their roster is almost as surprising as the whole idea for this team. We have Herr Xavier, who helped to create the team through experimenting on them. Yikes. And leading the team, we have Hauptmann England, aka Captain Britain, with Magon, aka Gloriana, Shadowcat, and Nightcrawler. Also, if you were wondering, yes, Kitty Pryde is still Jewish in this reality, which makes her character's history here pretty dark. Number 10. All-Female X-Men. Oddly enough, this book didn't do as hot as expected, despite the fact that it was an awesome powerhouse team composed of all ladies. This team was first introduced in 2013's X-Men series in issue number 1, as one of the main X-Men teams, and the series was part of the Marvel Now event. The team featured Kitty Pryde, Rogue, Rachel Summers, Jubilee, and Psylocke, with Storm as the leader. This team was the first in the history of the X-Men to be an all-female team with its own book. So while it was not a commercial success, it's still an important part of X-Men history to be noted for sure. Number 9. Chuck Austin's Uncanny X-Men. At least I kind of hope you've never heard of this one, because if you have, you probably just forgot about it after years of trying, and now I'm traumatizing you by bringing it back up. This is the team that featured Stacy X. Yeah. I like Stacy X, but I can also see why her character and this run were super problematic. Austin's run on Uncanny X-Men began in issue 410 and ran till issue 443. The problem here wasn't so much to do with the members of the team as the subject matter. Many people feel that Austin's run was hypersexual, and he also gave us the revelation that Nightcrawler's dad was Azazel, which honestly isn't that terrible, but then he also gave us the weird Draco storyline with the X-Men versus the Neopham, which was something. It was a time. All in, this was definitely a controversial run, especially considering the relationship between Husk and Angel. The team was made up of Archangel, Beast, Iceman, Nightcrawler, Stacy X, Wolverine, and Professor X himself to start, but it would later on feature Husk, Polaris, Northstar, Juggernaut, and Havoc. Before we move on to this next spot, just a quick little reminder to click that like button if you haven't already, it really does help us out. Number 8. Children of the Atom. You might not have heard of this one because it isn't even out yet, but this is one of the new teams and books that we had expected to see earlier this year, but due to the global pandemic was delayed and is now delayed again. Originally it was moved to January of 2021, but now we aren't expected to see it till April of 2021. Boy, that is a long wait. But just because they aren't around yet doesn't mean we can't talk about them. And if you haven't heard of this team yet, you might want to keep your eye out for when their book is released. Children of the Atom is a team of new teen mutants who are basically X-Men superfans and are trained by these very famous original mutants. Technically, the X-Men team was never meant to exist in Krakoa, as was just revealed recently in the comics, despite them having their own book as part of the Dawn of X line. I know, it's a little confusing. So it'll be interesting to see how the Children of the Atom, who are being advertised as kind of X-Men sidekicks, fit in exactly. In a world where, you know, there's not really supposed to be X-Men? Well, we have yet to meet the members of this team. We do know some of them not only have similar costumes to the classic X-Men, but also have similar powers. Number 7. Hellions. No, not that Hellions. This Hellions. In fact, Empath's look in the new Hellions was a throwback to the original Hellions team outfits. Empath was also an original member of the team. Before we saw the team revived in Dawn of X, they were Emma Frost's team. Basically her version of a teenage mutant team similar to, well, the New Mutants. We're also a Teenage Mutant team. Every time I say Teenage Mutant team, I just want to say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but that's not what we're talking about. Although they are also a Teenage Mutant team. In comparison to the new Hellions, these Hellions were not as crazy, but were somewhat troublemakers, who had an ongoing, sometimes friendly rivalry with the New Mutants themselves. The team consisted of Empath, Beef, Bevatron, Cat's Eye, Roulette, Taro, Thunderbird, Jetstream, and Firestart. The team was first introduced in New Mutants issue number 16 in the 1980s and was disbanded in 2009 in the comics after most of them were basically slaughtered, victims of a surprise attack. The team has returned since, but the new Hellions team only shares one member of the original roster, Empath. Number 6. X Corporation. Many people may have forgotten the existence of X Corporation since the organization was destroyed and became defunct back in the early 2000s, but they are coming back, so it's a pretty good time to remind everyone of their existence. Reminder, X Corp is still a thing. This actually just happened in the comics during the Empire event when we saw for certain that Xavier had revived the X Corp and that Monet and Angel seem to be running this branch of mutant affairs. X Corp in the past has been a non-for-profit organization working to help mutants in their fight for rights in less bold ways than what the X-Men are usually up to. It also provided a place of refuge for mutants who needed it, until the global organization had their various branches targeted and blown up around the globe following the events of M-Day. X-Corp will be getting their own book in the Dawn of X line, which I am way too excited about. I just want to see Angel get a moment in the spotlight, you know? Many believe the book to have been cancelled, but Jonathan Hickman actually confirmed early in December that it is still very much a go. Number 5. X-Men The End. In this series we saw a bunch of teams kind of come together, ending in one big one, and Chris Claremont's The End. I like this X-Men team as well because although she died pretty early on in terms of her appearance here, we also get a shout out at least to Dust. And Dust is such an underrated X-Men in my opinion. This comic also introduces us to the future daughter of Bishop and Deathbird, Aaliyah Bishop. The final X-Men team features Kitty Pryde, Wolfsbane, Karma, North Star, Dust, Martha Johansson aka No Girl, the Cuckoos, Cyclops, and a subgroup known as the Heavy Hitters, which features Wither, Frenzy, Polaris, Juggernaut, and Kid Colossus. Number 4. The Upstarts. Speaking of young mutant teams that are lesser known like the Hellions, we also have their straight up not friendly at all rivals, the Upstarts. The Upstarts were definitely a more villainous crew in comparison to the Hellions, just in general, as their whole goal was to basically kill mutants. The Upstarts were a mutant team created by Selene, the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club. She put the team together in order to test the members, getting them to compete for points which would be awarded whenever they killed mutants, based on the mutants' power set. Originally, the young group of mutants involved were unnamed and were promised that whoever got the most points would win a prize, which remained a mystery pretty much through all of the comics that they were featured in. I bet it's cake, and I bet it's a lie. Although I think it was also mentioned at one point somewhere that it was immortality, so in case you were wondering, for realsies. Number 3. Battle of the Atom Future X-Men. While everyone might focus on the Battle of the Atom Future Brotherhood team, as Raze has a tendency to steal the show, plus my girl Zorn Jean, and also featuring Molly Hayes, people tend to forget about the awesomeness that was the Future X-Men team. The real X-Men team. This team featured a much more skilled Iceman, who now was known as Ice Wizard, Wiccan, who had become Sorcerer Supreme, Chimera, who is believed to be Storm's daughter that she had with Black Panther, Shogo, Jubilee's son, known as Sentinel X, Colossus armed with Magic Soul Sword, Kid Omega as Phoenix, and Jubilee as Wolverine. Number 2. Extreme Sanctions Executive. The other XSE. This team also spiraled out of the team that we talked about previously on part 1 of this list, Extreme X-Men. XSE here stands for the Extreme Sanctions Executive. Similar to the original XSE that Bishop was a part of in the future, this team is also like a military police force meant to maintain and in some cases enforce peace is kept between mutants and humans. Storm was asked to create the team by the United Nations and eventually would increase its numbers by recruiting the rest of her X-Men, making this team another government-sanctioned mutant team, like X-Factor was, and still one of the first of those types of teams. Team members have included Bishop, Cannonball, Magma, Rachel Summers is on every team, I love it, Psylocke, Rogue, Sage, Wolverine, X-23, and Gambit. Number 1. X-Animals. If you're an intense X-Men fan, you may be familiar with Mojo's X-Babies, but are you familiar with his other attempts at recreating or recasting Marvel's 616 X-Men after they were believed dead? One such team that attempted to step in was the X-Animals. This was a team of, well, Animals, who each took on the role of a different mutant member of the X-Men. We've got a skunk standing in for Rogue, a bulldog for Wolverine, a pig for Dazzler, a rabbit as Havoc, a cat for our Storm, which I kinda love, a bird, possibly a hawk as Longshot, an otter as Psylocke, and a gorilla as Colossus. Sadly, this team was not acceptable as a replacement in Mojo's opinion, and he got rid of them. But I'd love to see them return at some point, if that's possible. Number 10. X-Statix. X-Statix was a team created to be a replacement for the original X-Force after they seemingly sacrificed themselves. The team was founded by Spike Freeman, who wanted to have a public mutant team backed by the government. Even the original roster of X-Statix would quickly become casualties, despite being a newly formed team. Coach originally was the team leader, but X-Statix would eventually rebel against his leadership, because he was kind of a jerk, to be honest, with members acting on behalf of their own motivations instead, and doing what they thought was best. X-Statix has had many different members over the years, as many of them died during their time serving on the team, which is kind of the whole joke of X-Statix. The roster has featured such members as Mr. Sensitive, Zeitgeist, Anarchist, Spike Freeman, Coach, Dead Girl, Dupe, You Go Girl, Gone Girl, Fatty, Rosa Lemper, The A, Vivisector, Bloke, El Guapo, Gin Genie, and Venus D. Milo, among others. Because like I said, a lot of them don't last very long. Number 9. Gamma Corps. The Gamma Corps are heroes and villains who have suffered gamma radiation that mutated their DNA. They were assembled to destroy the Hulk, armed with military weapons and trained by General John Riker, who also for a time acted as their leader in this mission. In fact, they were made to believe that the whole reason that they were DNA mutated was kind of because of the Hulk, so that's why they were all united against the Hulk at that time. During the events of World War Hulk, they would actually side with the Hulk though, and decide to pursue and hunt the members of the Illuminati, after learning that their individual predicaments were actually not the fault of the Hulk really at all. The members of the team were all quite specific to the Gamma Corps and featured Gray, Griffin, Mess, Mr. Gideon, and Prodigy, but not mutant David Elaine Prodigy. This Prodigy was instead Timothy Wilkerson, who initially believed that he was artificially aged and mutated thanks to the leader's DNA. But that was not true. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists where I talk about obscure Marvel teams that, you know, deserve a little bit of praise and maybe are stronger than you think they are, be sure to hit that like button and comment below to let us know what other teams you'd like to see on a list like this. Number 8. Nasty Boys. The Nasty Boys have to be one of my favorite lesser known villain groups of all time. So you know, I cannot pass up an opportunity to mention how awesome and how powerful they are. The Nasty Boys were Mr. Sinister's group of henchmen following his Marauders group. The field leader for the team is Ruckus, whose mutant power allows him to absorb sound around him and use his vocal cords to project it back out as a powerful concussive sound-based blast. Initially, the Nasty Boys were used in a plot to kill the Scarlet Witch, and later on in a plot to kill Malice. Their roster has included such members as One Man Team, Multiple Man, Hairbag, Ramrod, Gorgeous George, and of course, Slab. Number 7. Power Pack. The Power Pack is a team who many see as being less powerful or strong because, well, they started out as kids. But we've seen from looking into the future the potential for this team and its members when it comes to their power levels. And just because it's a younger team, it doesn't mean that they don't deserve your respect and don't deserve to be hyped, especially since they were created in part by one of the Marvel greats, Louise Simonson. The Power Pack first appeared in their own series in Power Pack issue number 1 in 1984 and were created by Simonson, June Brigman, and Bob Vychek. The team members include the Power Siblings, Alex aka Zero G, Katie aka Energizer, Julie aka Light Speed, and Jack aka Mass Master, and have also featured Lord Kofi Whiteman, cousin to the Alefire Whiteman, who first bestowed powers on the Power Siblings, and of course Franklin Richards, who was also on the team for a little bit. Number 6. Hellions. I feel like this is a list that really was made for me specifically to talk about because I just love gushing over teams and characters who are lesser known but still are so amazingly strong and deserve to be acknowledged. Case in point, the Hellions. The Hellions is a team that originally started out as Emma Frost's own mutant team and more recently was given over to Mr. Sinister to manage in terms of the team title. Technically these are kind of like two different Hellions teams, but I like to acknowledge all the history of a team name because I think that's important. Just like we have two Marauders that are quite different, but the Marauders' name is still connected to both, if that makes sense to you. On Krakoa, Sinister's Hellions was made up of the more volatile mutants on the island and was intended to act as sort of a rehabilitation group for them, where they could work out their frustrations via less desirable or perhaps marketable missions. The most recent roster included Psylocke, aka Quanon, Nanny, Orphan Maker, Grey Crow, Empath, Wildchild, and Havoc. And honestly, I miss them so much. Please bring the Hellions back. It ended really sadly, and they deserve better. Number 5. Agents of Atlas. Agents of Atlas is another team that really deserves more love and respect just based on its leaders and its roster. It's filled with powerhouses, whether we're talking about the original team or the Asia-based team, and currently the leader of this team I believe is Jimmy Woo, my guy. I love Jimmy Woo in the MCU and in the comics. The character has actually been around since the 1950s, so yeah, been around for a while. Members for Agents of Atlas have included Shang-Chi, Miss Marvel, Namora, Venus, Uranian, who was once known as Marvel Boy, Arrow, Io, Giant Man, White Fox, Swordmaster, and Silk. Number 4. Gamma Flight. You might know Alpha Flight, but do you know Gamma Flight? Gamma Flight is the Alpha Flight space program team. This team formed due to the disappearance of the Hulk, aka Bruce Banner. Gamma Flight was initially called together by Avenger and Alpha Flight commander at the time, Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers, to act as a task force to help locate Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk. And locate him they did, also being pulled through to the below place after a Brian Banner possessed absorbing man absorbed enough gamma radiation to open up a green door during the time period of Immortal Hulk. Gamma Flight's roster has included such members as Walter Langowski, at one point known as Sasquatch, Puck, Absorbing Man, Titania, Dr. McGowan, Rick Jones, and Doc Sasquatch. Number 3. Exterminators. Another secret powerhouse team that is one of my all-time favorites, and which I don't think we give enough love to on this channel, is the Exterminators. This team was primarily made up of young mutants who were saved by the earlier incarnation of the X-Factor team, back when that was a government-funded team and was kind of like the X-Men, the old X-Men reformed again. Standout members for Exterminators throughout the years have included Rusty Collins, aka Fire Fist, made popular by his very different but memorable appearance and adaptation in the Deadpool film franchise, Cable, Boom Boom, Richter, Whiz Kid, Lila Cheney, Cannonball, and of course, in the more recent team roster, Cora of the Burning Heart from Morocco, who is also so cool. The Exterminators first appeared in the 80s in their own self-titled series. Number 2. The Sisterhood. One of my favorite lesser known but immensely powerful teams in the Marvel Universe is the Sisterhood, also known as the Sisterhood of Mutants. Part of the reason why they're referred to as just the Sisterhood though is that technically not all of their members are mutants, so don't be confused by the name. However, all of their members have been women who are or have generally been acknowledged as supervillains, though not all of them even are supervillains, so yeah. The team was founded and led originally by Madeline Pryor. Throughout the years, members have included Lady Deathstrike, Celine Gallio, aka the Black Queen, Typhoid Mary, Lady Mastermind, the other female mastermind named Martinique, Psylocke, Quanon, Spiral, Enchantress, and Brightco. Number 1. God Squad. The God Squad is about as powerful as they sound, but still, they remain one of the lesser known teams in the Marvel Universe. I was kinda hoping we'd get like a God Squad reference in Thor Love and Thunder, but sadly, no God Squad. Maybe that was one of the things that got cut, who knows. The team was originally assembled by the Council of Godheads and first came together during the events of Secret Invasion. The team first formed in the Incredible Hercules issue 117 in 2008. The original roster included Adam the Demogorgon, Snowbird, the Eternal Ajax, and Amatsu Mikaboshi, later known as the Chaos King. The roster would go on to include such impressive members as Silver Surfer, Galactus, Circe, also of the Eternals, Thor, Amadeus Cho, and of course, Hercules himself.
Number 10. The S-Men. Red Skull, being the dastardly devil he is, made some backup plans in the case of his eventual demise. One such plan was a clone of himself who would come back in the modern era. Okay, side note, why do villains do this, making clones of themselves? The individual villain still kind of passes away, so if they move their consciousness or something, that kind of makes sense, but I don't get why this is a thing. But I'm pretty sure this clone isn't even like that. I'm gonna make myself upset, so let's just continue. Basically, waking up in this new modern world with mutants and all that jazz, this new Red Skull decided that he was going to dig up the body of Professor X and steal some of his brain, granting himself some telepathy, and as an antithesis to the X-Men, he created the S-Men. Yes, very creative. This was a group of individuals that the Red Skull had empowered using crazy mad science and magic. Almost all of them were pretty quickly taken out of existence by Magneto when this Red Skull tried to make a camp to exterminate mutants. Bad move, buddy. Bad move. Number 9. Zodiac Cartel. Honestly, it's a pretty cool idea for a group. This villainous group of hand-picked business leaders who were all born under different zodiac signs, as their leader Cornelius Van Lunt, or Taurus, was heavily into astrology. Each member, while representing a zodiac sign, also was based in a different American city, and their main goal was world economic and political domination. Its members originally were, other than Cornelius, Scorpio, Jake Fury, Aquarius, Darren Bentley, Aries, Marcus Lassiter, Cancer, Jack Cleveno, Capricorn, Willard Weir, Gemini, Joshua Link, Leo, Daniel Radford, Libra, Gustav Brandt, Pisces, Noah Perricone, Sagittarius, Harlan Vargas, and my representative, Virgo, Elaine McLaughlin. The team was first formed after the dissolution of a previous group called the Great Wheel of Zodiac, which had covert agents from around the globe including Baron von Strucker, Dum Dum Dugan, and even Leonardo da Vinci. Its dissolution also led to the creation of S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, and Leviathan as well, so you could definitely say it was important and somehow still relatively obscure. Number 8. Headmen. Sometimes it takes the smallest of things to bring people together, and while that may sound like an extremely beautiful sentiment, I'm saying it in relation to the villainous team known as the Headmen, who it seems came together because each of their powers revolves around their heads in one way or another, and it's honestly kind of unsettling in my opinion. Bonded together through their heads, these scientists sought out world domination, bringing them into conflict with the Defenders, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. This quartet consisted of Arthur Nagin, their leader, who had his head transplanted onto the body of a gorilla, Ruby Thursday, who replaced her own head with an organic computer capable of changing shape, Gerald Morgan, aka Shrunken Bones, accidentally shrank his own skeleton, including his skull, so he basically has really baggy skin, and Chandu the Mystic's head has been transplanted by Nagin onto a number of different bodies throughout his time, making him quite versatile. Number 7. Circus of Crime. Fritz Tybalt, then manager and ringmaster of a small Austrian circus, became active in the Axis powers during World War II. He was asked by German intelligence to take his circus to the United States of America to give performances in major cities while actually using his circus members' powers and talents in order to take out government officials. Fritz Tybalt's evil circus of crime consisted of Omir the Snake Charmer, Tommy Thumb, the Trapeze Trio, and Zandow the Strongman. However, Tybalt, who came to be known as the Ringmaster of Death, was captured by Captain America. But fast forward, and the Circus of Crime's new MO was giving a performance to a large audience. Then the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members then robbed the audience, who would remember nothing about the thefts when the Ringmaster released them from the trance, and the performance continued. This criminal circus fought the Hulk, Spider-Man, the Hawkeyes, the Avengers, and others. Number 6. The UFOs. These villains and their cleverly chosen team names. UFOs, like UFOs, because they got their powers in space. Yes, of course. Someone get me out of here, please. Okay, the UFOs here, inspired by the powers gained by the Fantastic Four, went to great lengths trying to reproduce the same accident that gave those heroes their abilities. The attempt succeeded, but they were interrupted by Bruce Banner, who discovered their ground control facility and was able to bring the shuttle down, because he thought it had been exposed to the cosmic radiation by accident. They were none too happy, as they thought they could have been made even stronger if he had not interfered, and they displayed their newfound powers in a frankly pretty awesome fight with the Incredible Hulk, even if they lost. Vapor has the ability to alter her form into any known gas. Vector gained the power of telekinesis from cosmic rays. X-Ray has been permanently transformed into a living energy field with the power to expel forms of heavy radiation capable of hurting even the Hulk. Ironclad has been permanently transformed into organic metal steel. He has superhuman strength, durability, and the ability to decrease or increase his own weight. His fight with the Hulk literally shook the universe, which is super cool. You should probably check him out. Number 5, the Frightful Four. A second group inspired by the Fantastic Four. Yes, the Frightful Four also did not come up with a very clever name. The Wizard, the Sandman, and Paste Pot Pete, who all regularly did battle with the Human Torch and were defeated by him around the same time, realized that they all had unique powers and a mutual disdain for the Fantastic Four. The Wizard suggested that they form a group that would be the evil counterparts to the Fantastic Four. A great idea, but it's just 3 dudes. They need a 4th member to their group, and what do you know, the Wizard had heard of a strange woman hiding out on a remote island on the Mediterranean who had complete control of her hair. Traveling there, the Wizard convinced Madame Medusa to join their ranks. Now this Madame Medusa was actually Medusa of the Inhumans, as some of you may have guessed, but she was kept under the influence of the Wizard using a device that kept her memories forgotten to her. They made their first attack at Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman's engagement party, which is kinda just rude if you ask me. Number 4, Wrecking Crew. When Dirk Garthwaite, otherwise known as Wrecker, held onto his enchanted crowbar, he invited his 3 chums, ex-physicist Dr. Elliot Franklin, ex-Army Master Sergeant Henry Camp, and ex-farmhand Brian Kalusky to come and do the same in the middle of a thunderstorm. When lightning struck the crowbar, all 3 men were empowered, becoming Thunderball, Bulldozer, and Piledriver respectively, and coming together to be the villainous Wrecking Crew. These mystical strongmen were mainly an enemy to Thor, but they originally fought against the Defenders. This group has actually been around for a pretty long time and have battled many a superhero. The Fantastic Four, Avengers, Omega Flight, Spider-Man, the Thunderbolts, and even got into a fight between the Marvel and DC universes. Number 3, Menagerie. The Menagerie is likely a more recent evil team, showing up for the first time in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Number 1 in April of 2014, when they tried to steal valuable decorated eggs from an antique store and were pretty easily defeated. So like, from the get-go, the impressive feats are on the lower side of the list, if you know what I'm saying. In fact, I'd say the most famous thing they've done is when they disintegrated Spider-Man's spider suit, making him have to create web underwear for himself. And it's kind of the underwear that is remembered here, not the menagerie. The animal-themed criminal team was created by White Rabbit, and its members included Hippo, Ox, Skyne, who did the spider suit disintegrating, Squid, Swarm, and, wait for it, Panda Mania. Nice. The Menagerie also is known for trying to rob a club where Nadia Van Dyne was celebrating her birthday with numerous other heroes, which, as you can imagine, it didn't go too well for them. Number 2, Death Throes. Remember how the headmen all came together based on their head-related powers? Well, I'll do you one better. How about the Death Throes, whose powers and names all have something to do with commonly throwing stuff? The ringleader, threw together teammates Bombshell, Knick-Knack, Oddball, Tenpin, and Throwdown into a group that works really well together, juggling their weapons between each other and doing battle with characters like Captain America, Crossfire, Hawkeye, and even Loki of all people, who stopped the group from robbing the big top casino in Las Vegas. The Marvel Wiki even lists their origins as quote-unquote joint effort to perform criminal and mercenary acts while using juggling expertise. I honestly kinda had a hoot putting together this point, as I can't believe this group of villains even exists. And lastly, at number 1 is Horticulture. Okay, of all the teams on this list, I think the Horticulture are my favorite. For starters, they look so cool. But then, you find out it's a bunch of older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists and want to bring Earth back to its more pristine time when it had about 7 billion less people on it. I just love how they use their regular names and the names just kinda suit their age and interest in plants. I don't know how, but they kinda just do. Augusta Bromes, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vetiver. Gosh. But yes, that's right, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, specifically flowers. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men number 3. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of horticulture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda, and they're also computer programmers, selling software to Orcus to monitor Krakoan gateways. But seriously, look at them. They're just awesome.
Number 10, Alpha Flight. This is for sure the least obscure entry on the list, as I choose to talk about them constantly, and Alpha Flight has been somewhat reinvented in the last few years and changed into an international space force being led by Captain Marvel, but we are talking about the original team. First appearing in X-Men number 120, Alpha Flight was Canada's answer to the Avengers, with members with unique abilities from all over Canada. Unlike most super teams who are always working together, Alpha Flight operated in more of a Mission Impossible James Bond kind of style, by choosing heroes from their roster and assigning each of them to specific missions that they would handle as individuals and pairs, only coming together as a full team in the case of extreme threats. Despite multiple tries by Marvel to give the team their own ongoing series, Alpha Flight has never quite caught on in the States. Perhaps they are just too specifically Canadian for a readership who tends to prefer American-centric stories, or maybe they just haven't been given the right push into the mainstream. Either way, Alpha Flight remains a team that not a huge amount of readers have heard of, and even fewer have actually read. Although, they did appear in one episode of the classic X-Men cartoon. Small victories. Number 9, ForceWorks. When it was determined that the Avengers' ever-expanding roster should be better divided up across the United States, rather than everyone working out of New York, the West Coast Avengers were formed. This experiment didn't end up working out, and the team was soon disbanded. In a typically Tony Stark move, Tony Stark decided that he should instead fund and create his own superhero team to help protect the West Coast. The resulting team was ForceWorks. The original team consisted of Iron Man, Spider-Woman, Wonder Man, and US Agent, with Scarlet Witch being chosen as the team leader. The team operated for a while, taking on threats like the Mandarin and Kang the Conqueror, but the team was plagued with internal issues. Despite Scarlet Witch being the team leader, Iron Man was constantly undermining her authority and forcing the team to carry out his personal vendettas. This attitude culminated in him forcing the team to brutally kidnap Hawkeye, which got him booted from the team. ForceWorks carried on without him for a while, but eventually decided to disband, although they were briefly brought back under the leadership of Maria Hill in order to fight the Robot Revolution. ForceWorks is an obscure offshoot of the already relatively obscure West Coast Avengers, however they did serve as the supporting cast for Iron Man's 90s animated series. Number 8, The Outlaws. Not to be confused with the team from DC Comics, Marvel's Outlaws are a group of heroes, all with a criminal past, who are led by Spider-Man and Silver Sable. The group formed when photographic evidence came out implicating Spider-Man in a robbery. Wanting to prove the innocence of the man who had helped them reform, Prowler, Rocket Racer, Will-O'-the-Wisp, Paladin, and Sandman all began searching for evidence that would prove the webbed wall crawler's innocence. They discovered that Spidey was actually working for Silver Sable, and that what he had stolen was actually incriminating evidence against a member of the Maggia crime family. Impressed with the group's skills, Silver Sable brought them on as freelancers, and the team would occasionally come together, usually whenever Spider-Man was being framed or something and needed support from outside of the Avengers. Although some of the various members of the team are relatively well-known characters, their team isn't well-known, as they come together so rarely and haven't teamed up since 1991. Number 7, Psyforce. When a telepathic CIA agent named Emmett Proudhawk had a vision about 5 young people with psychic abilities being protected by a hawk, he decided to track down the people in his vision and bring them together to become Psyforce. He got most of them together but was killed by a Russian operative. The 5 psychic youths discovered that when they all touched Proudhawk's Psylocke's mystic medallion, it summoned a creature called the Psyhawk, who would help them defeat their enemies. You know, like Captain Planet. The youths worked together to defeat an evil Russian paranormal named Rostov, and they were chased by members of the CIA, the KGB, and a shadowy organization called the Medusa Web, who eventually brought the kids on as freelance agents. Although they had their own 32-issue series, the fact that this Marvel team has no recognizable superheroes and is based in Earth 148,611 rather than the mainstream Earth 616 universe keeps them pretty obscure. Number 6. Force of July. The first DC entry on this list, Force of July were an Americana-themed group who often found themselves at odds with the Outsiders. The Force answered to the American Security Agency and were tasked with eliminating anyone whose activities were deemed to be subversive to America's interests by any means necessary. Some of the team's members include Lady Liberty, Silent Majority, Sparkler, Mayflower, and their leader, Major Victory. Although they aren't technically villains, their fanatic patriotism prevented them from seeing that they were being manipulated by their handler, who was using them to help his scheme to create a satellite called Project Orwell that would have been used to spy on people using their televisions. This plot was stopped by the Outsiders, and the Force of July later found themselves fighting against the Suicide Squad, who killed Sparkler and Mayflower. The remaining members ended up joining the squad but did not last long on the team's roster. Number 5. The Inferior Five. Coming from Earth 12 in the DC multiverse, this team are the Nepo babies of a team of heroes called the Freedom Brigade. When the Freedom Brigade retired, the heroes encouraged their children to follow in their footsteps, and they started a team dedicated to protecting the people of Megaopolis. Known as the Fearsome Five, the members of this team, Awkward Man, Blimp, Dumb Bunny, and Whitefeather, have somewhat useless and conflicting powers, and although they usually manage to save the day, it is usually a result of dumb luck rather than skill. Their lameness led to the people of Megalopolis calling their champions the Inferior Five, which the team eventually decided to adopt as their official name. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, their world was destroyed, and as a result they were sent to comic book Limbo, which is a realm similar to the Island of Misfit Toys, where characters who are written out of continuity remain until they're brought back into continuity. Number 4. The League of Losers. In the Marvel universe of Earth 6215, a time-traveling villain from the future named Kronoke used his knowledge of the past to travel back in time to the present with an army and kill all of Earth's mightiest heroes. Fortunately, the records he was working off of did not include any reference to these C-list Marvel characters because none of them had ever done anything that was worthy of note. Darkhawk, Speedball, Dagger, Terror, X-23, Gravity, and Sleepwalker were thus able to take on Kronoke and travel back to before the villain had stolen his time travel tech and stop him. Although this stranded the team in the future, it also created a divergent timeline known as Earth 2992, where the villain's scheme was never an issue. Wow, time travel can be such a pain to explain. Number 3. Section 8. One of the strangest teams in the DC universe, Section 8 is a group of what I will very generously call heroes who operate out of Gotham City. Each member of the team is more bizarre than the last, so buckle up. Shakes is a schizophrenic with a speech impediment. Jean de Baton Baton is a stereotypical Frenchman who hits people with a baton. Defenestrator is a massive former Arkham inmate who carries around a window to smash over his enemies' heads. Phlegm Gem spits massive amounts of snot at his enemies in order to blind them. Bueno Excelente is just some guy who sneaks up on his enemies and then essays them. Dog Welder is a crazy person who welds dogs to people's faces, and Friendly Fire is a hero who can shoot energy beams but is incapable of hitting anything he aims at, usually hitting his teammates instead. They are led by Sixpack, an alcoholic who pees himself and then attacks people with a beer bottle. Shockingly, this team has not gotten a big budget movie, and all of them were killed after an encounter with the mini-angled ones, with the exception of Sixpack, who suddenly manifested reality-warping powers to defeat the villains and save the world. Number 2. The Neo Knights. After having great success publishing comic books based on Hasbro's line of G.I. Joe toys, the two companies collaborated again to create the series that would give much-needed backstory for Hasbro's new line of toys, the Transformers. A lot of the Transformers mythology came from these comics, but due to the rights of certain characters remaining with the comic book company, not all of the elements were brought over for the television series or subsequent films. One of these elements is the superhero team, the Neo Knights. When the Autobots returned to space, leaving no one to protect their longtime ally, GB Blackrock, he decided to bring together a team of superpowered humans in order to fight any Decepticons that caused trouble on Earth. The members are Circuit Breaker, a woman who was paralyzed in an encounter with the Transformers and has developed a special suit that allows her to walk as well as fly and shoot repulsor beams. Also on the team are Thunder Punch, a man who can enlarge his feet and hands and punch with heightened strength, Rapture, a woman who can cause any sentient being to shut down and enter an elaborate fantasy, and Dynamo, who could channel the planet's latent energies. They are extremely obscure, only showing up in the original US and UK Transformers comics, and due to Hasbro having the rights for most of the Transformers and Marvel owning the rights to this team, they are likely to remain so for quite some time. Number 1. The Forgotten Heroes. They may have more appearances than some of the other teams on this list, and some of their members are relatively well known, but with a name like the Forgotten Heroes, how could they not end up on the top spot for this list? The team consists of a bunch of DC heroes who all stumbled upon ancient golden pyramids. When the heroes tried to report what they had found, the US government disavowed them and ruined each of their reputations to discredit them. Immortal Man brought all the heroes together and filled them in that the pyramids were part of a scheme by Vandal Savage to kill Superman. They formed a team together and teamed up with the Man of Steel to stop Vandal's plot. The team lives up to its name with members like Atomic Knight, Ballistic Congo Bill, Cave Carson, Dolphin, The Ray, Vigilante, and Resurrection Man, as well as a few slightly more well-known heroes such as Rip Hunter, Animal Man, and Rick Flag.
Not all Avengers are given the same treatment as Iron Man or Captain America.
But that doesn't mean we don't love them and want to see them rise to that level.
It's somewhat weird to think about the fact that this person on our list was an Avenger, but he was. And honestly, he was kind of great on the team, even developing a relationship with Janet during his time there. That's right, we're talking about Alex Summers, aka the mutant hero Havoc. Havoc has had a complicated relationship with heroics throughout his life. Initially, he wanted nothing to do with being a hero, but found himself dragged into the superhero lifestyle anyway, due to him being a mutant and constantly getting tangled up in stories involving the X-Men. However, I feel like being on the Avengers actually suits him better as a character, also allowing him to get out from under his brother Scott's very long shadow. Havoc is very much a middle child, and I feel like often gets stuck as a result of this, so it was nice to see him come into his own. In general, I feel like Havoc simply doesn't get a lot to do in the comics. He was with Maddie during Dark X-Men recently and was heavily featured in Hellions, but in both of those stories he kind of feels like a side character somewhat. And in Hellions we basically were just dealing with all of Alex's trauma, which, you know, while important and I did love, don't get me wrong, I would still just like to see Alex when he's in his power a little bit more. And lately that's been missing somewhat from the comics with his character, I think.
Leave the saving of the world to the men? Silverclaw doesn't think so. Silverclaw is the daughter of mortal Jamie Santiago and a volcano goddess. The goddess gave Silverclaw to her father as a gift. She was to be the protector of his village. As Silverclaw was growing up, her powers began to show. Those powers are kinda like shape-shifting, specifically regarding animals native to South American jungles and forests. She doesn't need to fully transform her body into an animal to take on the characteristics of it. She assumes a form that combines her human appearance with the animals. She's done this with jaguars, monkeys, pumas, and more. Silverclaw was headed to America to meet up with Jarvis, oddly enough. She was his sponsor child. Her flight was hijacked, and the only way to ensure the other passengers' safety was if she agreed to help the bad guys. Eventually, the Avengers show up, defeat everybody, Silverclaw explains her side of the story, and the Avengers let her join so she can help them track down the hijackers. They thwarted the bad guys, and Silverclaw remained on the team.
Honestly, I just really love Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, and lately I feel like we haven't gotten enough of her. Unlike some of the others on our list though, Janet has at least gotten her dues in the past. I mean, she is also one of the original Avengers, but in the modern comics landscape, I feel like both Jan and her adopted, sort of in a weird way, stepdaughter, Nadia Van Dyne, have both fallen by the wayside.
We know Hawkeye, he's clearly doing well if his hit TV show and mainstream fame is anything to go by, but he had to learn all his skills from somebody. One of his teachers was Swordsman. He met Hawkeye while working in the circus. Swordsman's circus act was shockingly sword and knife based, and when Hawkeye finished his sword training, they were often a duo. Swordsman is an Avenger now, but he wasn't always a stellar citizen. He has robbed people and left people for dead and gotten himself banned from multiple countries, and originally joined the Avengers as a double agent, But he eventually had a change of heart due to his heart. During a period where Swordsman is taking a required break from the Avengers, he ends up working for this gangster, and that's where he meets the eventual love of his life, Mantis. Mantis said she can fix him, and she did. Now Swordsman has the self-respect needed to 100% leave crime behind, and the pair rejoined the Avengers. It went well, but it didn't end well. He died. It was super tragic. Mantis yells, "Darling, it's a moment." He comes back in the form of a sentient tree eventually, then dies again, then is revived again during the Chaos War, then died again. He deserves better than that. All that character development for what? He also has a really cool sword. It can shoot energy rays.
I personally love Monica a lot. She's just a strong member of the Avengers who honestly very rarely gets enough love in the comics. However, it is important to note that there are pockets here and there for us Monica fans, but I do wish we just got more of her in general, especially as a leader, which I think Monica is pretty great at doing. Monica Rambeau was a leader of the Avengers for a while. Monica Rambeau was a leader of the Avengers for a while in the 80s, but her time in that role was pretty short-lived due to her being tricked and manipulated into giving up leadership by Dr. Druid after she was fatally wounded in a battle. Not only did Monica Rambeau lose her role as leader, but she was also zapped of her powers at this time because that happened in the confrontation that also wounded her, prompting her to give up her leadership role. So she was all around severely nerfed at that time, and also mainly because Dr. Druid was working to betray his teammates this all happened. Monica would also be known as the first woman to use the mantle of Captain Marvel. That's right, a lot of people think it's Carol Danvers, but it was actually Monica. But after leaving the Avengers would lose that name as well and go on to become Photon instead. Now she had to give up her name because Captain Marvel's son appeared kinda out of the blue in the comics and wanted to use the name for himself. Fortunately, Monica would go on to lead the Next Wave team later on in her career, but she would also later find out that she had been manipulated into this role by Beyond. And even after fighting back against the Beyond Corporation, who is admittedly evil, she would have her personality altered due to this traumatic experience. So yeah, it's been a very mixed bag for Monica throughout her history, sadly. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, and a lot of the things that I love to read her in, she also kinda gets messed up in.
One thing about me, I love Sleepwalker. I think he is so neat, and trust and believe if I can get him on a list, I will. The MCU judges books by their cover because at first, multiple Avengers think Sleepwalker is a villain. That is not the case. He is a good guy. Sleepwalker is not just his name, but also his job. The Mindscape is a dimension that is in all sentient things, including you and I. It has beings in it whose sole purpose is to be evil and make people go insane by invading their mind. The Sleepwalkers stop this from happening and protect the minds of innocents. One of these Sleepwalkers was tricked by a longtime enemy into entering the mind of Rick Sheridan. They fought in the dream, but when the villain escaped, our hero was trapped and bonded to Rick. Eventually, Rick learned of his Sleepwalker buddy, and the two became co-inhibitors of Rick's mind. The Sleepwalker used his time on Earth to fight the evil entities from the Mindscape that materialized in the physical world. He was a member of Operation Lightning Storm, and being a part of this initiative when Quiet Man started causing problems, Sleepwalker got recruited to the Avengers to help out.
Quasar never gets enough love in my opinion. I'm not sure if it's because he has a similar vibe to Captain Marvel, or even at times in a weird way, not really power related, but Wonder Man. And both Marvel and Simon are just put above Wendell for some reason. But ever since I read more about Quasar in Dazzler, which I highly recommend you check out if you haven't already, I became more intrigued by his character, and then as a result disappointed when I learned he wasn't really as prominently featured today as some other heroes are, for some reason. Granted, Quasar, while niche, has still been in hundreds of issues. Still, I wish he had his own book today, or at least appeared more regularly in someone else's solo series, or was just like on a team. Honestly, I miss the days of the old Dazzler comic. I loved him as a supporting character there. I just want to relive those days. Also bring the Dazzler series back, it's so good.
The rootinest tootinest cowboy in the Wild Wild West, Two Gun Kid. He isn't technically a cowboy, but he sure does look and act like one. Personally, I love the musical Oklahoma and by extension the cowboy aesthetic, so to me, this hero absolutely deserves the world. He is not supercharged, he is just a guy that wanted to be a hero. He trained until he was an expert gunfighter and horseback rider. He is also a master of the lasso, iconic. He is is from the 1870s, he did all his training in the 1870s, and grew very, very famous. Think like Annie Oakley, Billy the Kid. So how did he end up in the modern era? When the Avengers were fighting time-traveling thorn in their side, Kang the Conqueror, they ended up conveniently in the same time as 2-Gun. 2-Gun was obviously interested in the people from the future and helped them fight. He did good and was offered a reserve spot in the 20th century, which worked out well. He could explore everything the modern world had to offer and only help the Avengers when absolutely necessary. Getting homesick for the homestead, he returned to his era eventually, but continued to help the Avengers whenever they visited. 2-Gun Kid is part of the reason heroes like Hawkeye and Angel came to be. Hawkeye was inspired by 2-Gun's heroism and took up the style when he became a hero, and Angel, before he was Angel, was 2-Gun's doctor in his old age. 2-Gun made sure to tell him about the heroes of the future, and those stories ended up inspiring Angel to become Angel. 2-Gun Kid had an impact.
Look, I saw Madam Web, and it was an experience, to put it lightly. Of course, for this list, we're talking about Julia Carpenter's Madam Web though, not Cassandra, but to be honest, I wasn't too happy with how she was featured in the film either. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of why it was bad here, because that would be honestly a whole other video. In fact, I've actually done 2 on that subject on my own channel, but trust me when I say it's a disaster of a film, okay? Just trust me. It's just so bad, and it feels like it undermines the powerful and much beloved character of Julia Carpenter, as well as honestly everyone else, but we're talking about Julia. Julia was the second woman to take up the Spider-Woman mantle after Jessica Drew, and it was during her time as Spider-Woman that she came to have a few adventures with the main Avengers team, later going on to fully join the West Coast Avengers. And I just think she's great. She doesn't get enough praise.
Hi, before I say this state name, I would like to clarify again, I'm Canadian, so please don't make fun of me, I will say it wrong. The man from Massachusetts, Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. The Black Knight is a mantle that gets passed down, so there have been a bunch, and not always good guys. The Black Knight, before Dane, his uncle, was a villain and requested that Dane not be. Good news, Dane wasn't, he joined the Avengers. He got on the Avengers' radar by telling them Magneto captured 2 of their teammates. He doesn't join right away, he spends some time at his family's estate first, a castle. You learn pretty quick that the Black Knight has a very specific medieval aesthetic. The Black Knight travels by Pegasus, and he has this really cool weapon called the Ebony Blade. The Ebony Blade is a double-edged sword, but seriously, it gives the wielder basically immunity and can cut through anything. But it will slowly corrupt its user, that's the downside. Black Knight officially joined the Avengers after defeating Kang together, but he had been an ally to them long before that. He was a great asset to the team. He wasn't just a great fighter with epic transportation, he was also incredibly intelligent. Black Knight might finally be getting the mainstream fame he deserves. He was in the MCU movie Eternals, played by Kit Harington. He wasn't like a major character, but at the end we see him gain possession of the Ebony Blade, so it's pretty clear it's him. And with Kit Harington in the role, it's definitely something to look forward to, even if we don't know when we'll see the character again on screen.
And first up is my own personal pick, but it's Moon Knight. Now before you get all up in arms, yes, I know Moon Knight is primarily a street level hero, which is not commonly the kind of hero that can defeat a premier superhero team, but you know who else is a street level hero? Batman. And we all know what Batman can do, and he doesn't even have a super powerful ancient Egyptian god on his side. My reason for thinking that Moon Knight can take on the Justice League comes from Avengers Volume 8, Issue 33 to 37 in 2020, otherwise known as the Age of Khonshu. Not only does Moon Knight defeat a number of Avengers, he even steals their powers. It turns out that both Moon Knight and Khonshu have been receiving visions of the Earth under attack from Mephisto and the forces of his dimension. So, in an effort to stop him, Moon Knight defeats and steals the powers from Iron Fist, Ghost Rider, the Sorcerer Supreme, Starbrand, Black Panther, and Thor, who he beats up using his own hammer and crushing him between multiple different moons. And then he wipes out Mephisto and even gains the powers of the Phoenix Force, which he then uses to defeat Khonshu himself, who was amped up by the powers of those whose Moon Knight just stole. So yes, I think he could probably take on the Justice League given the right circumstance. Now next up, whether you love or hate Carol Danvers, there there is no denying that this energy-wielding superhero is an absolute powerhouse. Carol was the head of security at NASA when she was accidentally subjected to the Psyche Magnetron machine, which imprinted her with energy from the superhero Mar-Vel's Kree negabands, which gave her superhuman strength that allowed her to support the weight of a dead celestial, super stamina that lets her exert herself for over 24 hours before even getting tired, superhuman durability to withstand planet-destroying explosions, superhuman agility and reflexes that are next to instant, a regenerative healing factor that exceeds Wolverine's and can be extended to others, self-propelled flight at 3 times the speed of sound even in the vacuum of space, and flash precognition that allows her to randomly subconsciously anticipate the moves of her opponents. But all of this is somewhat secondary to what is arguably her main power, the ability to control, absorb, and manipulate energy of a whole bunch of different kinds, which extends to let her project her spirit, manipulate molecules, transmute matter, create energy constructs, and even boost up her already OP abilities. There's literally no denying that Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel is straight up broken. Now next up is a curious pick, and it's Sersi. Sersi is a member of the Eternals, an evolutionary offshoot of humanity gifted with amazing powers and abilities to look after the human race throughout the ages, which makes them similar but also just a smidgen bit different and more powerful than the Eternals movie counterparts. Either way, as an Eternal, Sersi's body is augmented by cosmic energy, and she has total mental control over her entire molecular structure, which allows her and other Eternals to be immortal, indestructible, and invulnerable to pretty much anything which isn't stronger than the cosmic energy that augmented them. Sersi has enough strength to bench 20 tons, but thanks to her telekinesis, she can augment that to lift around 25 tons. Her telekinesis also allows Sersi to fly at around 760 miles per hour. She can project cosmic energy and heat, light, or concussive blasts. She has telepathy that allows her to hypnotize weak-minded fools. She can teleport, but she kinda hates it, and she is even able to project images from her mind, which is such a cool an idea for an ability. Those are all the powers that we don't see in the Eternals movie, because arguably the ability that she has the most talent in is her matter transmutation ability, which allows Sersi to transmute nearly any item or being into almost whatever she wishes. Among the Eternals, she has the highest ranking of power with this ability. It allows her to self-heal any injuries she does actually sustain, which aren't many, and I have no doubts that she could probably transmute things into kryptonite, which would absolutely help against the Justice League's heaviest hitter. Next up on our list is Thor Odin's son. The Asgardian god of thunder is one of the most powerful heroes on the Avengers roster. Whenever anyone talks about Avengers level threats, one of the key things that they talk about is whether Thor or the Hulk can just handle the situation alone. Being the son of Odin the Allfather and Gaia an Elder God, or maybe his mom is the Phoenix Force, it's kinda gone back and forth, Thor has all the incredible powers of the Asgardians, but boosted up to a whole nother level thanks to his mother, whoever she is. As the god of strength as well as thunder, he's one of the strongest Marvel characters, being able to either defeat or stalemate astronomically strong beings like the Midgard Serpent, the Hulk, the Silver Surfer, Gladiator, and Hercules. His stamina lets him basically fight forever, and he's next to completely invulnerable, not to mention his weather and energy manipulation and the use of his hammer. Even when he isn't in possession of his hammer though, and is just Thor Odin's son, he is still a force to be reckoned with, and especially recently, he keeps getting more and more boosts to his power, like when he was Rune King Thor, or now that he's the Allfather of Asgard in his father's place, which gives him the Thor Force, and he's gone even beyond that when he became the Herald of Galactus. Dr. Stephen Strange. His magical feats are almost unmatched by any other. He is among the most adept magic user in the Marvel multiverse and has shown it way too many times. When he first came on the scene, and for a long while, he was so insanely powerful that he was capable of doing pretty much anything he wanted using magic. It got to the point that Marvel even decided to nerf him back down. He has passed a test in which he accepted death that meant that he now no longer ages and can only be taken out by external means, meaning he's pretty much immortal. His energy blasts are capable of destroying moons and planets. He's mastered the words of the Black Priest, which allows him to distort reality, or used to allow him to distort reality. He frequently calls on the divine empowerment and extra-dimensional energy of mystical and non-mystical beings in multiple dimensions to power his spells. He's the defender of reality, and he only really even shows up when there is a threat to the entirety of existence, battling against gods, cosmic entities, and the most powerful demons in existence. Magic users already have a better chance against the Justice League than most in the DC universe, but Doctor Strange is already a cut above most of the magic users users DC even has. Next up is a former Marine and scientist turned superhero by the name of Adam Brashear. And he's not only one of the strongest heavy hitters in Marvel Comics, but he is also one of the smartest characters and one of the absolute most underutilized favorites. Blue Marvel's origins take place in the 1960s during a project to use antimatter as an energy source. Adam and his best friend Connor were caught up in an explosion that turned Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor, which should, in theory, actually be pretty much impossible. Now this power is insane. To put it into perspective, 1 gram of antimatter contains the same energy as the device drop that ended World War II for the Americans. 1 droplet could power the entirety of New York City for a full day. Using this power, he was able to lift an American warship which weighs over 93,000 tons, and then he flew it all the way back to America. He effortlessly moved a meteor the size of Arkansas to save the world, and the Watcher said that Adam is capable of splitting the moon in 2 with a single blow. He was able to directly engage Iron Man, Ares, Wonder Man, and Miss Marvel in combat at the same time, and he casually overpowered them and then turned around and pushed the Sentry to his limits and knocked him into Earth's orbit with a single punch. He may be seemingly relegated to the background of Marvel Comics, but Blue Marvel is practically unstoppable, and he's slowly making more and more appearances as Marvel finally embraces how awesome his character actually is. Now, upon first appearing in the Marvel Universe, Red Hulk laid waste to several of Marvel's strongest heroes. He defeated both Thor and the Hulk and even bested the Invisible Woman, Thundra, Storm, Black Widow, Hellcat, Tigra, and Spider-Woman all at once, quickly establishing himself as one of the strongest Marvel characters in existence. Now, to his credit, he later took a more heroic turn, joining the Avengers. With almost all the same powers of the Hulk, plus some that are unique to him, Ross is an incredibly powerful character. He has easily taken out the Abomination, punched the Watcher unconscious, and taken out an Elder of the Universe. He can control his transformation to Red Hulk, and while his strength is greater than that of the base Hulk, he doesn't increase in strength as he gets angrier. Instead, he emits gamma radiation as heat that gets hotter and hotter and hotter as he gets angrier and angrier and angrier, even becoming an explosion if angry enough. He is also able to absorb energy, usually gamma, but has absorbed and stolen the Silver Surfer's power cosmic, riding off into the distance on his silver surfboard. With the power of a million exploding suns, Robert Reynolds the Sentry is not just another Marvel version of Superman. In my opinion, he's even cooler. The Golden Sentry Serum gave Robert Reynolds more than just the highest level of strength in the universe, the ability to move and fly faster than the speed of light or just straight up teleport and near invulnerability. The Sentry also has molecular manipulation abilities that have allowed him to defeat the Molecule Man, photokinesis, which allows him to shine brighter than the sun, which could probably be used by Superman. He can turn completely invisible and produce blasts of light from his hands and eyes that could burn the Hulk's skin and level entire city blocks. He's got psionic abilities that he uses to hold himself together, implant his memories in others, erase minds, and stop the hammer of Thor. He has biokinesis abilities that have let him heal others, resurrect himself, reconstitute his molecules, and as the Void, he gives others cancer. Now, speaking of the Void, that is a whole other dark side to this hero that is intrinsically tied to his existence, which is not only incredibly powerful in its own right and makes the hero 10 times more interesting, but when Sentry combined with the Void, this godlike being basically got a power boost and became even more of a god. As a natural conduit of one of the most powerful forms of dark magic, chaos magic, which may or may not be an actual thing according to Doctor Strange, the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, is one of the most terrifyingly powerful beings in Marvel Comics. Using her chaos magic, Wanda has the very powerful ability to alter reality, which she has used to create her own children, bring the Avengers to their knees, and even rewrite all of reality to make mutants the dominant species for a while before she just straight up removed half of their powers. When she was born, Wanda had a natural affinity for magic. This was boosted up by the gift or curse of chaos magic given to her by Chthon, the old god of chaos, which was then boosted up again by the experiments of the High Evolutionary at Wundagore Mountain, which gave her an even deeper connection to magic. She can channel energy from other dimensions and from entities like Chthon, Sidorak, and Morgan, and is considered to be the nexus being of the universe. If DC's Enchantress could take on the League, Scarlet Witch definitely can. And last up for today, it's the Gamma-powered Green Goliath, and he has been around for a long time. Since he showed up, there are only a small handful of people who have ever been able to stop him without using some kind of magic or reality warping. The Hulk's infinite strength has a lot to do with that. A strength that grows based on his anger and has never actually ever reached a cap, allowing him to destroy entire planets, be a threat to entire galaxies, and he's been able to shake the entire multiverse with his punches. It also has a lot to do with his basically limitless dynamic durability, which has allowed him to survive attacks from enchanted weapons, powerful blasts of energy, stronger than Ground Zero nuclear explosions, the Human Torch's Nova Blast, and he could stand up to the forces that could crush adamantium and destroy entire planets. But now, thanks to Immortal Hulk, we know that the Hulk is actually literally immortal. He just comes back from the below place anytime he actually passes away. Actually, in that story, we even get to see an alternate future where the One Below All uses the Hulk to destroy literally everything in existence. And the Hulk is still showing more and more of his potential with the reveal of the Titan Hulk persona that was able to fire energy blasts and is utter nightmare fuel. There have been crossovers where we've seen the Hulk fight Superman and Batman separately, but I'm gonna be honest, I really don't think those stories did the Hulk justice at all.
On to someone you may have not been expecting, since we rarely talk about them on the channel, to be honest. It's Nightmask. Nightmask is another hero who hails from Jonathan Hickman's time on the Avengers series. He was created by Jonathan Hickman and Jerome Opeña. Nightmask was an artificially created perfect human. I wish I was that. He was made by Ex Nihilo, whose goal was to reshape Earth. It was learned that his name initially was Blackveil, though he'd go on to take up the human name of Adam Blackveil, and the superhero name of Nightmask. As Nightmask, Adam joined Sunspot's team of multiversal Avengers, who were of course attempting to figure out what was causing the universes to collide in what we now know as incursions, which were also the beginning of basically the end of the multiverse. Next up, I've talked about Ex Nihilo before on the channel, but someone who doesn't often get as much love, or also I guess rather doesn't get enough love, because I feel like Ex Nihilo doesn't either, gets less love, let's just say, is Abyss. Which hero do you think doesn't get talked about enough? For me, Eye-Boy is another one of those, but a much less obscure hero that honestly deserves more love and respect is of course Storm. Let me know if you're a Storm fan in the comments as well. Back to the point at hand, Ex Nihilo and Abyss were like a package deal really. They worked together to bring a garden to the surface of Mars, but got into a conflict with the Avengers when they attempted to change the Earth with their powers. Yeah, the Avengers weren't here for that. They were creations of the Builders. The Builders were attacking the universe, which put them at odds, of course, with the Avengers. But eventually, when Ex Nihilo and Abyss realized the universe couldn't be repaired, they actually turned on the Builders and joined forces with the Avengers. However, Abyss's time working with the Avengers was not as long, as she chose to sacrifice herself in the fight against the Beyonders, who they learned were actually behind the incursions, where universes were, as I said before, colliding with one another. Continuing on, this is a hero who was gone for some time in the comics, but has made a fairly recent return within the last few years after being dead for a little while. Let's see if you can guess who I'm about to say. Agent Venom, as he was known at the time, was a member of the Secret Avengers, which, if you'll remember, was a pretty cool team run by Captain America himself. So although it isn't the core main Avengers team, it definitely had connections and was closely tied to the original team, hence why I'm gonna include it here on our list. Agent Venom, for those who might be unfamiliar, is actually the person who tormented Spider-Man's Peter Parker when he was younger before becoming his friend. That's right, that's Flash Thompson there. Flash currently in the comics is known as Agent Anti-Venom. For a good amount of time, as I said, he was actually dead, having given his life in the fight against Red Goblin, a version of Carnage who at the time was actually bonded with Norman Osborn. And if you think that sounds terrifying, yeah, it was terrifying. Next up, this one surprised even me, honestly. I never knew about this, but apparently Firestar used to be a member of the Avengers. what? She gained her membership after her time on the Hellions, Emma Frost's Hellions to be clear. After she left that team due to her learning the truth about how Emma Frost was manipulating her, she ended up on the New Warriors. She became a core member of that team and would go on to become engaged to fellow New Warriors member Justice. Rage, another New Warriors teammate, brought both Justice and Firestar to the Avengers, and after helping the team and training under Hawkeye, they were all basically given full membership status. Next up is a mutant I feel like many people forget about, but definitely not a mutant you should sleep on. Manifold is a mutant that not everyone knows, but honestly, you should know him because he's pretty cool. He is Eden Fessy, a unique mutant with the power to communicate with the universe, getting it to agree to basically bend and fold to his will so that he can travel across the universe easily if he so chooses. He seems like an extremely powerful teleporter as a result, but his powers are actually to communicate with the universe instead. Manifold ended up being recruited into the Avengers team following the events of Avengers vs. X-Men. He was part of a team that was sent to Mars to actually rescue the original Avengers. Continuing on with our spacey vibes here, we have a hero who is also based in the realm of the cosmic, though not the realm of mutants. Charlie 27 is actually better known for his affiliation with the Guardians of the Galaxy team, the original one, who actually hailed from the 31st century, in case you didn't know. He initially joined up with Yondu, Vance Astro, and Martin X as one of the original members of that team. His powers are that he is super strong, as he was genetically engineered to live on the planet of Jupiter, which makes him super strong because they got a lot of gravity, way more gravity than we have on Earth, and he was therefore built to withstand its insane gravitational forces, which means he has far more muscle mass than most other humanoids, making him both stronger and also denser. Not only that, but he's also a military man and therefore is very good at fighting, tactics, and military strategy, as well as a pilot. Charlie 27 ended up teaming up with the Avengers in their fight against Korvac, and it was during this time that he became an honorary member of the team. He attended one of their membership meetings, but ultimately decided to part ways with Earth's mightiest hero team. He was like, nah, more of a Guardians guy, peace. Moving on to an epic powerhouse of an individual, who despite their power isn't as often featured in the comics, to be honest. Hyperion is a hero who originally hails from another world, the Earth 13034. There, he was an alien Eternal who was left abandoned on Earth when he was just a baby. When his Earth was destroyed, he came over to Earth 616, becoming a hero in the main continuity. He would end up joining up with the premier superhero team on Earth, the Avengers, and actually give his life in their fight against the Beyonders. However, that wouldn't be the end of his story, as following the destruction and reconstruction of the multiverse during and after the events of Secret Wars, Marcus Milton's Hyperion would return to existence. However, this time around, he wouldn't join the Avengers and instead would become the leader of the Squadron Supreme. If you know about the Squadron Supreme, then you know how that goes. And now for something completely different, but even more obscure, honestly. Demolition Man is an interesting hero whose origin is closely tied to Ben Grimm's The Thing, but also who started as a close ally of Captain America as well, despite him getting his powers from a criminal. That criminal was Power Broker. Initially, Dennis Dunphy just wanted to be a football player, basically. He tried out for various teams but never made the cut, so when the Power Broker offered him powers, he jumped at the opportunity to become strong enough to actually play professional American football. Of course, the American dream. However, he became so powerful that while good enough, he was now considered to actually be too good and too powerful to play with, other regular base level human football players. Fortunately, the Power Broker instead offered him a place in the Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation, where basically superpowered individuals were free to wrestle against one another, so you don't have to worry about being too strong, which was exactly what Dennis did. It was there that he'd meet the Thing and Sharon Ventura's Miss Marvel and befriend them. He would break the Power Broker's control over him, and later, through his ties to Power Broker Inc., would actually meet with and become an ally of Captain America, even joining up for a time with the Avengers through that relationship. Next up is Gilgamesh, as in Gilgamesh? Gilgamesh? The hero from that really old poem, The Epic of Gilgamesh, that I read in my classic literature class back in high school, from the weird animated movie they made based on that poem that I went to see on a field trip with my class. Oh wait, no, that was Beowulf. Regardless, both heroes, Beowulf and Gilgamesh, are ancient, and their major claim to fame was actually built into history through stories and epics that were passed down through generations. Seriously, look them both up. They both have really cool epic poems, and you can read about them. Gilgamesh as a hero was so popular that he even made his way actually into Marvel Comics. I know. Poor Beowulf though, I don't think he's in Marvel Comics. Although he should be. Someone write him in if he's not already in there. However, unlike Hercules, he is not as tied to his historical or supernatural origin of old, but instead was incorporated into the modern mythos of the Eternals. Although, that being said, Gilgamesh does hang out with Hercules and other heroes, and is kinda tied to the mythos, but you know, he's an Eternal, and that is not in the epic poem, let me tell you. They did not mention the Eternals in there. The Eternals are a group of ancient beings that were created by the Celestials, who visited Earth and basically did experiments on humans like billions of years ago. They were destined to do battle against the first race the Celestials created on Earth, the Deviants, often known as being the more evil race of those two, though really in the end we learn it's a little bit more complicated than good or bad races. Gilgamesh was known as the Forgotten One when he first teamed up with the Avengers. They offered him a place on their team after he helped them to fight a demon invasion in New York City. Probably just another Tuesday for the Avengers. And it was Mr. Fantastic who actually suggested that he take up the name of Gilgamesh, with neither Gilgamesh or Reed knowing at the time that this was a name the hero had actually used back during 3000 BC, as he actually was kind of the Gilgamesh of historical legend, but he was also really an Eternal. And finally, Captain Britain. But not the Captain Britain that you think. This version of Captain Britain is not Brian Braddock, it's not even Betsy Braddock, but it's actually Kelsey Lee. Yeah, I'll bet many of you out there haven't heard of Kelsey. She only appeared in a select number of issues. She was the Captain Britain that was selected after Brian Braddock's Captain Britain became the ruler of Otherworld, because of her bravery where she put herself as a civilian in danger just to help the Avengers in a fight against the Wrecking Crew and seemingly died. She was chosen to become the new Captain Britain. When offered the choice of the Sword of Might or the Amulet of Right, she chose the sword, making her a much more aggressive and brutal version of the hero. She ended up joining up with the Avengers after she returned to life and aided them in their fight. However, after the events of Avengers Disassembled, being knocked out of that fight early on by a rampaging She-Hulk, she ended up actually leaving the team. Hence why a lot of people don't know about her. Number 10. Invisible Woman. If you've ever wondered how separate the Avengers and Fantastic Four are kept in the comics, the answer is fairly separate. Usually. While the FF are good friends with many of the Avengers team and vice versa, they usually stick to fighting their own villains in their own comics. However, in the late 1980s, there was a time around issue 307 when the Fantastic Four members and founders Susan Storm, aka the Invisible Woman, and Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, decided to actually leave their team for a period. They would be absent from their main team, the Fantastic Four, for almost 20 issues. But where did they go? Well, for a few issues, they were actually members of the Avengers. That being said, their time on the Avengers team was even more short-lived than their absence from the Fantastic Four comic. They were members from issue 300 of the Avengers to issue 303 when they left the team. They would return temporarily along with other heroes who had been members in issue 305, but that was pretty much it at the time for their Avengers run, which actually makes up only about 5 issues total. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know that you love us by clicking that like button. Or at least, let us know you like us. Like. Number 9. Sersi. At the time that the Fantastic Four were briefly members of the Avengers, there were also some other folks you might recognize joining up with the Avengers team. Well, you may or may not recognize them, actually, as they are known for belonging to another Marvel superhero team, which hasn't always been the most popular team around. But I gotta be real with you, their latest series by Kieran Gillen was one of the best things that I've read in the last few years. I'm actually so sad it was cut short. My word and art, it was good. We are talking about, of course, the Eternals. Not all of the Eternals have been members of the Avengers team, and those who have definitely aren't as iconic of members as the mainstays like Captain America and Iron Man. But I do enjoy the relationship the Eternals have with the Avengers overall, with some of them being former members. It strengthens their ally bonds, but it's also cool to think about just how much power Eternals like Sersi brought to the team during their time on that team. Number 8. Avenger Prime. Avenger Prime is kinda like all of the Avengers merged together. At least that is what the original version of this character was. They made their first appearance in the 2013 Mighty Avengers series, but another character with that name also appeared in the 2021 Free Comic Book Day Avengers and Hulk comic. They showed up, of course, in the Avengers portion of that double feature comic. Their Avengers Prime was shown as the leader of the Deathlock Avengers forces, who stood guard at the God Quarry, seeking to watch, protect, and warn against major multiversal threats and potential chronal collapses. Spoilers, but this version of Avenger Prime was later revealed to be none other than a variant of Loki, if you can believe it. The other Avenger Prime we saw before this was a different being altogether who, thanks to a ritual, was made up of the mighty Avengers team bonded together. You may have heard of one of these, or you may have heard of neither of these, or you may have heard of both of them, but I'm assuming probably unlikely unless you're fully immersed in the comics. It's my life. I literally just lean back into a bath of comic books. Number 7, Fang. Daken is the son of Wolverine, who actually currently goes by his given name of Akihiro in the comics, and has also taken up the superhero codename of Fang. Initially, the name Akihiro was known by, Daken, was actually a cruel nickname that he simply chose to adopt as his own. Daken in Japanese translates to cur or mongrel in English, and was used in reference to the fact that Akihiro was actually of mixed race. His mother was a Japanese woman, Itsu, who was murdered before she could give birth to him, and his father, of course, was the Canadian Wolverine, who believed that the unborn Akihiro had also been killed along with his wife, and did not know that he'd actually been stolen away by the weirdo villain Romulus, and survived following Itsu's death. Daken was raised to hate his father and would grow up to become a villain and specifically an enemy of Wolverine. Norman would later recruit Daken to become his stand-in Wolverine for his own Dark Avengers team. And of course, this is before he was known as Akihiro or Fang, but now he is a hero, so he counts. Dun dun dun. Number 6, Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel has barely made any appearances recently in the comics, despite being one of the greatest powerhouses we've seen. It's downright rude, if you ask me. Now, of course, if I'm missing something that is amazing that happened with him lately, please do let me know, but I don't think he's really even been around since, I believe, the end of the Defenders Beyond series last year. Before that, he appeared in Doctor Doom series, but my question is, when are we getting a Blue Marvel series? Huh, Marvel? While Blue Marvel has not been a member of the main Avengers roster, which honestly also kinda seems insane to me at this point, he has been a member of the Mighty Avengers, and honestly he deserves to be a member of the main Avengers team and deserves to appear more, if you ask me. I mean, no one's necessarily asking me, like Marvel isn't calling me and asking, but Marvel, if you call me and you ask, it would be like, yo, where's that Blue Marvel series? Can I have that? Number 5, Black Knight. Honestly, probably one of the most underappreciated heroes we have had as not just a member, but also a leader of the Avengers, is the Black Knight. Black Knight is a character who feels like lately has faded somewhat into obscurity. Even the Black Knight MCU project announced only a few years back that was to star Kit Harington in the role as Dane Whitman's Black Knight has fallen into uncertainty and, honestly, obscurity. Does anyone remember that? I remember that. I thought maybe with Kit Harington, made famous for his role as reluctant hero Jon Snow in the series Game of Thrones, playing Dane Whitman in the Eternals movie, we might actually see a resurgence of this character in the comics, bolstered by his MCU appearance, but apparently not. However, while Dane's role as the Black Knight was teased at the end of the film with the appearance of his ancestral cursed sword, the Ebony Blade, we have yet to hear anything about the development of his announced series, and even Harington himself says he's pretty much in the dark on what Marvel's plans might be involving the character. Though I think he's still down to play the character, so fingers crossed, Black Knight, is that happening? Number 4, Valkyrie. Brunhilde is Valkyrie, or at least she was Valkyrie. Now there's another Valkyrie, and other Valkyries besides, but I digress. Brunhilde is also a Valkyrie. Was a Valkyrie in the comics. She ended up joining the Secret Avengers after her apparent death during the Fear Itself event. As a character, she honestly dies quite a bit, but she usually gets to return, which is awesome to see at least. As an Asgardian, Brunhilde has power that comes from, well, just being of Asgard. She has superhuman strength, speed, durability, and reflexes, has slowed aging and increased lifespan, and can heal, and that's just her Asgardian stuff. She's also a Valkyrie, so that is its own power set as well. Although, as I said, all of that doesn't always save her from dying. She does quite a bit, honestly. Number 3, Gilgamesh. The Eternals and the Avengers are both hero groups, but more than that, they are also both allies to one another and even, honestly, friends. Some members of the Eternals have even teamed up with or been a member of the Avengers, as I said before, and Cersei isn't the only one from the Eternals team to join up with the Avengers. Both Cersei and Gilgamesh each served on the Avengers team at one point. Cersei ended up being offered membership to the Avengers after befriending Captain America, whereas Gilgamesh actually joined the Avengers for a short time after Captain America had lost his mantle temporarily to US Agent. His time on the team may have been brief, but he's actually believed to be one of the all-time strongest members that we've ever had. Number 2, Nova. Nova is Richard Rider. He basically came on to the Secret Avengers to act as their powerhouse when Captain America originally banded the team together after Hammer was disbanded. Nova is basically insanely powerful due to him being the host of the Nova Force. He only ended up sticking around for the first arc of the first Secret Avengers series volume, as he had to do some cosmic stuff and was pulled away, but hey, he was still a member for a time, so it still counts. Nova is insanely strong, fast, durable, can self-heal, can fly, is capable of interstellar flight, and he's super smart, as he has access to the Xandarian world mind, basically giving him access to all the knowledge of Xandar. Or at least he did. I don't know if he still has that, but he did have that, and if he did have it before, then I'm assuming he still remembers it? It's a lot to remember though, to be honest. Number 1, Cable. Nathan Summers ended up joining the Avengers team at a time when Captain America was seeking to present a show of unity. Hence, Cable ended up on the Avengers Unity Division, which was meant to bring together Avengers and X-Men after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men had created some tension between the two premier superhero groups of Earth. In regards to the series' title name, the team was actually known as the Uncanny Avengers, with Cable joining up as early as issue number 4. Cable is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic due to him being the offspring of X-Men member Cyclops and his wife, Madeline Pryor, who is basically Jean Grey's clone as created by the mad mutant geneticist villain, Mr. Sinister. Despite Maddie being his birth mother though, Jean has also kind of been like a mother to Nate after she was implanted with the memories of raising him, making him kind of like her telepathically retconned son, with Maddie becoming more like a surrogate in terms of her relationship with Nate and honestly how she was treated in the comics, which is a whole other story. That's a whole other list. I could do a whole list about Madeline Pryor and how she's been treated.
At number 10 is Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. Thank you to Rodney Lindsay 849 for suggesting him in part 1 of the series. Sam Wilson is the guy who became the new Captain America after Steve Rogers hung up his shield. But here's the thing, in the Avengers, even though he took on Cap's mantle, he's not exactly getting the spotlight he deserves. See, Steve Rogers, the OG Captain, is a tough act to follow, no doubt, but Sam's got the heart, the skills, and the wings to match. He's proven himself time and time again, but fans still don't give him the credit he's due. Let's not forget, he's carrying on the legacy of Captain America himself, and that's no small task. But nevertheless, Wilson's a great successor. This guy's got some mad skills. He can fly like a boss with those wingsuit thingies, plus he's got his vibranium shield that he rocks just as good as Cap did. But for some reason, he's often just pushed to the sidelines. At number 9 is White Tiger. Thank you to Victor Sage _. You might not have heard much about her, and that's honestly a real shame. White Tiger, aka Ava Ayala, made her appearance in the Ultimate Spider-Man and some Lego Marvel games. She's got a pretty cool backstory too, being the sister of Hector Ayala, the original White Tiger. But here's the thing, she's been kind of left in the shadows. With her agility, strength, and that insanely underrated mystical amulet she's got the potential to be a real force on the Avengers team. There's also that whole fling with Peter Parker that fans seem to be really into. So it's high time we get to see more of White Tiger in action. She's got what it takes to be one of the strongest Avengers, and it's about time she got the recognition she deserves. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. At number 8, we got Hercules. The Avengers have housed a plethora of gods, you guys. But you see, when people think about godly Avengers, usually it's Thor that hogs the spotlight. But hold on a second, because Hercules deserves some serious recognition too. He's got the strength, the charisma, and an impressive set of abs, yet he often plays second fiddle to the god of thunder. Imagine being a god yourself and still living under someone else's shadow. Not cool, right? Like, even when you go into Herc's fandom wiki, his featured quote is literally a self-comparison to Thor, about how whatever Thor can do, Hercules can do even even muddier. It seems like no matter what, if Hercules is a part of the conversation, Thor has to be too. Or Maestro, I guess, but you get my point, right? Hercules deserves better. He's taken on cosmic threats, lifted entire mountains, and shown that he's more than just a pretty face. Let's give Herc some time to shine, Marvel. After all, the Avengers could use a bit more divine power in their ranks. At number 7 is Loki. Wait, what? Now, you might be thinking, why are you even considering Loki, the literal antagonist of the first Avengers movie, in a discussion about the Avengers? Well, it's because Loki is one of those characters who doesn't neatly fit into the good or bad box. He's kind of like that friend who's mostly a pain, but sometimes has moments of real kindness. When it comes to the Avengers, we often focus on the big names, but Loki's different. He's a trickster, a troublemaker, and he's caused his fair share of chaos, but deep down, there's a part of him that wants to do the right thing, and frankly, that's what makes his character so fascinating. So is Loki good or bad? Well, it's not that simple. See, people aren't just good or bad, they're a mix of both, and Loki here is no exception. He's made mistakes, but he's also shown that he can change and do the right thing when it counts. And so in the end, whether you think Loki deserves better or not, there's one thing for sure. He's a character who keeps us guessing, and that's what makes him one of the most intriguing Avengers of them all. And number 6 is Quicksilver, recommended by Nelson SC 9670 and Rodney Lindsay 849. Again, Quicksilver bit the bullet way too early in the MCU. I mean, don't get me wrong, Wanda's cool and all with her reality-bending powers, but her brother Pietro, aka Quicksilver, well, he definitely got the short end of the stick. See, he's got super speed, which is super awesome, but here's the deal. Quicksilver didn't get nearly enough screen time or development in the movies. I mean, sure, he had his moments, but they were just glimpses of what he could do. With a power like super speed, there's so much potential for epic action sequences. I mean, we've all seen the X-Men scenes. He could have been a real game changer in the MCU battles. Plus, he's also got that snarky attitude that could have added some humor to the team. So let's give Quicksilver the love he deserves, and maybe, just maybe, if fans cry loud enough, maybe we'll get another shot in the MCU. At number 5 is Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones is an Avenger who's been on the sidelines for way too long. You might have recognized her from her Netflix series, but in the comics, she's a powerhouse. Super strength, durability, and some mean investigative skills. Yet she's often overshadowed by big names like Iron Man and Thor. Now, while she's not out there space battling aliens, her street level heroics are just as vital. Imagine if she had just a little more screen time and a chance to shine alongside the heavier hitters. Jessica Jones deserves way more recognition and a bigger role in the MCU. At number 4 is War Machine. Now, many people just think of War Machine as sort of an Iron Man light, but he deserves way more credit than that. I mean, come on, his name is literally War Machine. The guy's suit of armor is loaded with firepower. Sure, he doesn't have the same level of tech or even charisma as Tony Stark, but he's a vital member of the team. Think about it, War Machine is a military asset that brings a different set of skills to the table. He's got the experience, the discipline, and the tactical know-how. Plus, the suit of his can go toe-to-toe with some serious threats. So let's not forget about War Machine when we talk about the Avengers, because he's definitely one of the strongest and deserves a lot more recognition. And number 3 is Jack of Hearts, recommended by Robert Pike 5670. Now, the Jack of Hearts isn't your typical Avenger. See, he's got this super crazy cosmic power, like he can manipulate energy and stuff. Sort of like he's a walking nuclear reactor. But here's the thing, he's always kind of been underrated despite his insanely powerful superpowers. He's been in and out of the Avengers, never really getting the spotlight he deserves. I mean, okay, just imagine having that kind of power and not being in the spotlight. It's like having a Lamborghini and just keeping it in the garage, am I right? The Jack of Hearts is definitely one of the strongest Avengers, period, and it's about time he got the recognition he deserves. And number 2 is Madam Web. There's one character who's been lurking in the shadows, and I'm not talking about a stealthy superhero. I'm talking about Cassandra Webb here, aka Madam Web. Now, Madam Web is kind of like the unsung hero of the Marvel Universe. See, she's got this crazy ability to see into the future and across the multiverse. Basically, she's the ultimate guidance counselor for Spider-Man. But here's the thing, folks, she's been nowhere to be found in the movies. Not in the MCU, not in the Spider-Verse films, nada. I mean, come on, with her powers, she could have helped the Avengers dodge a lot of disasters. So let's hope one day Madam Web gets her time in the spotlight, because she's the unsung hero in the background who deserves a lot more love on the big screen in the foreground. And at number 1 is Black Widow. Honestly, I'm stunned that nobody mentioned Natasha Romanoff in the comments of part 1, which is surprising, because if there's any superhero who got relegated to the sidelines during the entire run of the MCU, it's Natasha Romanoff. Now, what's impressive about her is that she's just a regular human being, no superpowers, yet she's keeping pace with all of these superhuman heavy hitters. But here's the kicker, she even went as far as to sacrifice herself during Infinity War, way before she even got her own solo film. Like, talk about a major oof. I mean, sure, eventually we got that prequel, but I mean, it would have been nice to see her come back at the end of Endgame. She deserved a lot more screen time, don't you think? You see, the strongest superheroes aren't just the ones with the flashiest powers, and Black Widow, being a human who just basically went to the gym her entire life, definitely proved that.
Number 10, Hellstrom. Hellstrom is Damon Hellstrom, also sometimes going by the name Damon Hellstorm, the son of Satan. His initial appearance in Marvel Comics was shrouded in controversy due to him being marked as, well, you know, the son of the devil. But in recent years, this all died down with the ultimate dissolution of the Comic Code Authority, which made moral judgment calls on what subject matter could be covered or touched upon, even in comics, a lot less controversial, let's just say, for the most part. Damon's father might not actually be the devil, as a few in Marvel Comics have made claims to this title. But either way, he still has become the ruler of at least a hell dimension, thanks to his birthright. While Damon is not known for appearing on the main Avengers team, he is known for being married to a fellow Avenger in the past, Hellcat, and has been a member of the Savage Avengers, which is why I'm counting him here. Although, lately, I feel like he's been a little less hero-y in the comics. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Do it, it's good for you. You know what people say? An apple a day keeps the doctor away, a like a day keeps me at bay from telling you all of that all the time. Number 9, Hellcat. We don't talk about Patsy Walker Hellcat that often on Top 10 Nerd, but lately, I don't know, I've just been in kind of like a Hellcat kind of mood, I guess. Hellcat is definitely a hero who is overlooked on the Avengers roster, and honestly, her history has granted her some pretty unique and fun powers. I had fun looking back into Hellcat's past to be like, oh yeah, she has all these cool things. She has some magical abilities, including the ability to basically like dodge magic and see through illusions, making her hard to target for any magic users. She even can tap into a demonic side of herself, calling upon demonic energy to give her a boost in certain realms and in certain instances. It's conditional, but still is pretty cool. Number 8, Hawkeye. Hawkeye is often thought of as just being a guy with some arrows who has really good aim. Kinda is that. But the fact that he's one of the few human members of the Avengers who doesn't have any superpowers per se, other than maybe like really enhanced eyesight, but not superpowered, just like abnormally good in ways that sometimes don't make sense, is exactly why he deserves more respect, more love, more admiration from us all. Hawkeye's Clint Barton doesn't have powers to rely on, and he still manages to keep up with the rest of his teammates. That's pretty awesome, I gotta say. I wasn't always a Clint fan, but I like Clint Barton, he's pretty cool. Number 7, Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman is another character who sometimes gets shafted in the comics, and she is a character who often gets compared to her seeming male counterpart, Spider-Man. Although truth be told, in canon continuity, Spider-Woman actually is older than Peter, and therefore in comic books history anyways, she was actually Spider-Woman before Peter was Spider-Man. She's canonically older, so I mean, she has a kid and everything. Something Peter has never really even been allowed to do permanently as a character, settle down, have kids, and grow up, all that good stuff. Although I would say that the fun of Jessica Drew is that she might be adulting really hard, but she never really fully grows up. She's always fun, sassy, and still figuring out so much of her life as she goes through it. To me, she's always been not only fun and badass, but also a relatable character, which is why I feel like she deserves to be featured more and get more respect from Marvel writers and fans alike. Hence why she's on this list. Number 6, Black Black Knight. Honestly, probably one of the most underappreciated heroes we have as leader of the Avengers is the Black Knight. That's right, he was a leader of the Avengers, everyone. The Black Knight is a character who feels like lately he has faded into obscurity somewhat. I thought maybe with Kit Harington, made famous for his role as reluctant hero Jon Snow in the series Game of Thrones, playing Dane Whitman in the Eternals movie, we might actually see a resurgence of this character in the comics, and I was hyped for that, bolstered by his MCU appearance. However, while Dane's role as the Black Knight was teased at the end of the film with the appearance of his ancestral cursed sword, the Ebony Blade, we have yet to hear anything about the development of his announced series, and even Harington himself says he's basically in the dark on what Marvel's plans might be involving this character. So it seems like we might have to wait a bit longer for Black Knight to get the respect he so deserves from modern day fans, but hopefully that's coming at some point soon. Like, come on, Marvel, give me the Black Knight series, give me something, I want it. I feel like it could be cool and it would be very different. Number 5, Vision. Vision hasn't really had a major focus on him in some time. I love that he agreed to join up with Carol's Avengers and as such is getting more time on the Avengers team in the present day, where he can once more be in the spotlight. But I do feel like there was a little period in there where Vision wasn't really doing much of anything. Vision might seem like a boring character devoid of personality because he's an android, but I would argue that at times he is maybe more human than the rest of his teammates. There are moments in the comics where for me he reminds me of another android that I know and love, Data from Star Trek. Often it is his humanity that seems to motivate him and also seems to be something that Viz struggles with as well, both in realizing its existence within himself and in accepting that human part of himself. Like, I mean, you gotta realize it before you can accept it, but even when I feel like he's kind of like, oh, maybe that's what's going on, I feel like he's not willing to fully embrace his humanity. I know he's an android, but sometimes he's just some really human stuff, guys. Number 4, She-Hulk. She-Hulk recently just had her own solo series, which as far as I've read thus far is amazing, by the way. I haven't finished it yet, but yeah. That series unfortunately just ended, and honestly it bums me out. She-Hulk is Jennifer Walters, who contrary to some very loud opinions, is not just a gender-swapped version of the Hulk. She is her own character in her own right, being Bruce Banner's cousin, who he came to shortly after his transformation into the Hulk, kinda seeking some help from Jen. However, during his visit, Jen was attacked by criminals who were worried that she, as a lawyer, was going to take down their boss. A very real threat, since Jen is actually a pretty great criminal lawyer, or was so at the time anyways. Now she's more into superhero lawyering, but still. After this attack on her life and Bruce being forced into giving her an emergency blood transfusion to save it, Jen Walters was forever changed into the sometimes monster, mostly hero, She-Hulk. She-Hulk has had a tumultuous path throughout the comics, having her highs and her lows. She has had long runs and short runs, and I'm kinda disappointed she isn't doing more these days, especially considering she also just got her own Disney Plus series, so you'd think that would help to give her character a comic book boost, but not really apparently. Her recent series didn't even make it to 20 issues sadly, and like I said, it honestly was great. I'm not fully up to date, but trust me, the issues I've read are really good. You should check it out. It's like classic She-Hulk. It felt so like original She-Hulk times. Ugh, so good. Number 3, Captain Marvel. I would argue that in a way, Carol is only recently starting to get her due. Captain Marvel has been and always will be one of the strongest Avengers around when it comes to the team. She is a cosmic powerhouse who has overcome a ton of adversity, but when it comes to her getting the respect that she deserves, she has had honestly a rough past. There was the whole thing with Marcus Immortus, see Avengers 197 through 200 for that fiasco, and then there was Civil War II, which saw Carol deal with some major character issues regarding how she was presented and written at that time. She became the villain of the story that should have honestly been equal in terms of which Avenger fans sided with, like in Civil War I. However, that isn't how Civil War II went down. Lately, however, Captain Marvel is finally getting the respect she deserves as she has recently become the leader of the Avengers as we move into this new Avengers era. I am excited to see this kind of development happening for Carol, who has always been a strong and intelligent character who understands how to best utilize and motivate a team. So see her in that leadership role, it's perfect for me. Number 2, Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel has barely made any appearances recently in the comics, despite being one of the greatest powerhouses that we've ever seen. It's downright rude if you ask me. If I'm missing something amazing that happened with him lately as well, let me know, but I don't think he's really even been around since the end of the Defenders Beyond series. Before that, he appeared in Doctor Doom series, I believe, but my question is, when are we getting a Blue Marvel series? Huh? Marvel? Give us that Blue Marvel series right now, I want to read it. While Blue Marvel has not been a member of the main Avengers roster, which honestly also seems insane to me, he has been a member of the Mighty Avengers, which is why I'm including him on this list. And also because, come on, Marvel, give us a solo series, do it. Number 1, Scarlet Witch. Only now is Scarlet Witch Wanda Maximoff starting to get the story she has so long deserved. For years, Scarlet Witch was epically burdened by her past and haunted by all of her misdeeds and mistakes she had made along the way. M-Day has to have been one of the worst moments in mutant history, and it's all kinda cause of Wanda. M-Day happened in 2005 in the comics as a result of Scarlet Witch striking out at mutant kind after the events of House of M, where she attempted to create a reality where many heroes were happy. Fortunately, she is now finally moving to a place of healing, refusing to be defined by her past while running a magic shop in Lockkill, New York, with the help of MCU's Darcy, appearing in the comics for the first time. Here, finally, Wanda refused to let her past define her present self. Yes, finally, it's only taken us since 2005. It's taken so long to get to this point, but we're finally here. Ugh. Poor Wanda.
Number 10, Mantis. Mantis actually got her start in comics when she used her abilities to reform swordsman or Jacques Duquesne, which actually got her into the Avengers. Mantis's powers and abilities are more than what you may have gathered from her film counterpart. Mantis has complete control over her entire body, which in turn gives her peak human agility, the ability to accelerate healing through force of will, and an empathic nature enabling her to communicate telepathically with and sense the emotions of others as psychic vibrations. She can also control her heart and respiratory rate and blood flow as well. Her mastery of the Kotati priest's martial arts, which focuses on the manipulation of nerve endings and pressure points, has enabled her to knock out beings as powerful as Thor, and her telepathic and empathic abilities are improved upon thanks to the 2 little antennae that she has coming out of her head. But it doesn't stop there though. Mantis also gained abilities when she merged with the Kotati, such as being able to communicate with both plants and animals, and survive in space in a physically solid energy form. She can transfer herself from plant life to plant life across interstellar distances or even dimensions, creating a new body from the plant life wherever she ends up. She can transmit and receive telepathic impressions, she has precognitive powers, and more recently, she can fire powerful pyrokinetic energy blasts from energy fields, communicate directly with cosmic beings such as eternity and death, and completely control her personal energies as well as her physical form. I don't want to keep talking about it anymore. Number 9, Hawkeye. Clint Barton is essentially just a regular human man, but despite that, and likely because of his abilities and talents, he is considered a power level 4 according to Nick Fury's intel, whatever that means. Those aforementioned abilities include being a master of archery in the use of regular bows, longbows, compound bows, and crossbows, with basically perfect accuracy, able to fire multiple arrows at a single target in just a few seconds, hitting multiple targets in a few quick strokes, and directly hitting small targets at the greatest of distances. But he now also has near perfect precision with any aimed or thrown weapon. He is at the peak level of human eyesight possible, is in peak athletic human condition with peak strength, endurance, and reflexes. He's an expert acrobat, tactician, and master martial artist, but just listing off his abilities isn't going to give you a proper understanding of how cool Hawkeye is. So what has he done? In Avengers Volume 3 number 14, Hawkeye was cornered by 17 marksmen and took them all down without taking a single life. And in Hawkeye Volume 4 number 1, Clint ran into a wanted criminal in a bar and took him down silently, somehow fracturing his neck with a deck of cards. I don't know. Number 8, Tigra. When Greer Nelson first came on the scene, she was just known as the Cat, and was given powers tied to her costume. But that all changed when she became Tigra, or Tigra, however you want to pronounce it. Mutating into a human-tiger hybrid in a ritual that bound her to the quote cat people, which while it may be a silly name, was a race of humanoid cats who were created in the Middle Ages, so cat people. Now before you laugh at her for looking silly, just know that in her tiger form, Tigra is granted some useful abilities. Her superhuman strength allows her to lift over 10 tons with her leg muscles, allowing her to perform a standing jump of 12 feet. She can run at speeds of around 70 miles per hour, has superhuman durability, agility, reflexes, and stamina, and as we all know, cats have heightened senses and like to knock things off of wherever you carefully place them. And as far as I know, the former is still the same with Tigra tigra, whose senses are about 10 times that of a human's. Tigra's eyesight can sense the infrared portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, allowing her night vision. She can more easily detect the movements of an opponent. Her hearing is so strong that she can detect a ball of tissue paper being dropped at a distance of 40 feet, just like every other cat, and her sense of smell is so developed she can selectively sort through odors just to track someone. Number 7. Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is one of, if not the greatest martial artist on Earth. He was trained from birth to become the ultimate warrior. He can take on multiple opponents at once and can even defeat people much more superhumanly powerful than he is. In fact, in the White Hot Room, when the Phoenix organized a tournament to pick who would be the new host, the only reason that Shang-Chi lost was because he refused to take someone's life, having him expelled from that tournament. He is particularly skilled in Chinese martial arts, but his skill branches out to many other forms of martial arts as well. In one case, he even worked with Spider-Man to create a new martial art based on Peter's powers. Shang-Chi also is able to manipulate Chi energy, which he can use to enhance his strength and durability, and can even detect others based on their energy, like he did when he detected a psionically masked Jean Grey. But Shang-Chi gets a much more significant boost of power when he's using the 10 rings. He can use those rings as projectiles, manipulate their size, and use them to levitate or even fly. The rings grant the martial master superhuman strength, durability, speed, and stamina, and he can even manipulate the energies from the rings to do many other things as well. And then, just to top it all off, thanks to the other side of his heritage, Shang-Chi inherited his mother's psionic abilities to communicate with his blood relatives, even the deceased ones. Freaky. Number 6. Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart is a hero you may not have heard of, or maybe you have, I don't know. What I do know is that Jack Hart was the son of a brilliant scientist, a scientist that created the ridiculously efficient liquid sci-fi fuel called Zero Fluid. In a tragic comic book backstory, that fluid was exposed to Jack and it gave him his awesome but difficult to control abilities. Importantly, he was also part alien, with his mother hailing from the Contraxian race. Now, due to his cellular mutation that took place after his Zero Fluid exposure, Jonathan Hart is now able to produce pink concussive energy beams and blasts from his hands and body, taking up the incredibly clever name of Jack of Hearts. Jack of Hearts can use his zero energy blast to fly at speeds currently not specifically known, but he has flown halfway across the United States in 3 minutes flat, which is pretty fast. His biological structure was reformed to basically give him the superhuman starter pack abilities, but his strength has been able to lift 25 tons. He has enhanced speed, stamina, healing factor, and durability, able to withstand some pretty heavy hits and survive in the vacuum of space. He also went through another mutation which gave him the ability to think as fast as a computer can, which is really cool, and he can retain and retrieve stored information from deep recesses of his brain, which is also really cool. Number 5. Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, a former Marine and scientist turned superhero, stands as one of Marvel Comics' most formidable heavyweights. Not only does he have immense physical strength, but he also ranks among the most brilliant minds in the Marvel Universe. He's an underutilized character who happens to be one of my personal favorites. His origin story unfolds in the tumultuous 1960s amid a groundbreaking project centered on utilizing antimatter as an energy source. However, an unforeseen explosion during the experiment forever changed Adam and his close friend, Connor. The cataclysmic event transformed Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor, giving him extraordinary superhuman abilities. Embracing his powers, he assumed the mantle of the Blue Marvel, a masked hero dedicated to safeguarding the world, but tragically, Connor's fate took a darker turn as he became Anti-Man, a villain. Their epic clashes reached a climax during one unforgettable battle when the Blue Marvel's mask was torn away, revealing his identity as an African-American hero. In the racially charged climate of the 1960s America, President John F. Kennedy urged him to retire prematurely to alleviate tensions. It wasn't until decades later that he came back as a full-on superhero and kicked some serious butt in the Avengers. Number 4. Cersei. Cersei is a member of the Eternals, an evolutionary offshoot of humanity gifted with amazing powers and abilities to look after the human race through the ages, which is similar but also just a smidgen bit different from the Eternals' movie counterparts. As an Eternal, Cersei's body is augmented by cosmic energy and she has total mental control over her entire molecular structure, which allows her and other Eternals to be immortal, indestructible, and invulnerable to pretty much anything. Cersei has enough strength to bench 20 tons, but thanks to her telekinesis, this, she can augment that to lift about 25 tons. She can also fly at around 760 miles per hour, which is, I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty dang fast. She can project cosmic energy, has telepathy that allows her to hypnotize weak-minded fools, but she can also teleport, but she hates it, and she is even able to project images from her mind, which is such a cool idea for an ability. Those are all the powers that we don't see in the Eternals movie, because arguably the ability she has the most talent in is her matter transmutation ability, which allows Cersei to transmute nearly any item or being into almost whatever she wants them to be. Among the Eternals, she has the highest ranking of power with this ability, and it allows her to self-heal any injury she does actually sustain, which aren't many because she's awesome. Number 3, Luke Cage. Criminal turned unstoppable superhero is quite the feat, but Luke Cage handles that with grace, becoming a pillar of his community and even eventually becoming mayor of New York itself. Whenever I think of Luke Cage, the word unstoppable is what actually comes to mind. I just think of him as this big brick wall just standing in the way of anyone who would try to harm anyone else. Luke went through a super soldier experiment known as the Burstein process, which increased his cellular regeneration rate. This means that Luke was given a level of super strength that, with training and experience, has made him strong enough to lift 50 tons. But there have been times where he's exceeded that, and this strength lets him perform thunderclaps, leap incredible distances, and he's been able to grab onto the back of an aeroplane and force it to come to a complete stop. That is nuts. Alongside his strength, he was obviously given superhuman stamina to match with that, but most know him for his nigh invulnerability. Luke's skin, muscles, and bone tissue are about as hard as titanium steel, making him basically immune to bullets and blades. He can withstand hits of around 1 ton and blasts of 150 pounds of TNT, but those numbers wax and wane depending on the story. He has taken hits from people far stronger than himself and survived falls from 90 stories up. If Peter Parker is the heart of New York, Luke Cage is basically like the wall. Number 2, Wasp. Traditionally, the Wasp has been considered one of the less powerful members of the Avengers. Her unique abilities, which include shrinking, flight, and emitting energy blasts through her Wasp sting, are undeniably formidable, yet individually they might be classified as street level powers. In the presence of iconic figures like Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man, few anticipated that the Wasp would rise to prominence within the team's ranks. However, the Wasp defied those expectations in remarkable fashion. She achieved the distinction of becoming the first woman to lead the Avengers ever, a feat that astonished her teammates and fans alike. Her years of experience endowed her with wisdom and capabilities that far exceed the sum of her individual powers. The Wasp's mastery of her abilities, coupled with her intelligence and resourcefulness, transformed her into a formidable hero who surpassed the expectations of everyone who had ever underestimated her. And finally, in at number 1 today is Protector. Novar, also known as the Protector, is an extraterrestrial figure who carries a bit of a renegade reputation. In a remarkable display of his power, he once took down both Thor and Captain Marvel simultaneously, an impressive feat by any measure. However, it's worth noting that many readers may not be familiar with the character of the Protector, as Novar has gained more substantial recognition among fans as Marvel Boy, particularly through his involvement with the Young Avengers. Hailing from Earth 200080 as a Kree super soldier, Novar has since laid claim to the vast universe of Earth 616 as his own. His unique set of powers include, and I'm not joking, explosive fingernails, psychedelic saliva, wall crawling abilities, heightened senses, and a remarkable conscious control over various bodily functions, among other powers. Novar's prowess in combat is truly formidable, a trait that certainly captured the attention of his teammate turned lover, Hercules. In shedding his Avengers affiliation and the Protector moniker, Novar has found his true calling and thrived as a member of the Young Avengers, the West Coast Avengers, and has even transitioned into the role of an interstellar diplomat and a Guardian of the Galaxy.
At number 10 is Scarlet Witch, who's at number 10 not because she's less unstoppable than any of the rest of the heroes on this list, but because it's so blatantly obvious. A natural conduit of dark magic with the power to bend reality to her will. That's Scarlet Witch in a nutshell. She can rearrange the fabric of existence itself, crafting and shaping the world around her like a master sculptor. And if you're thinking that sounds like a recipe for some serious chaos, well, you're not wrong. With her chaos magic, Wanda can do things that can make mere mortals like us question the very nature of reality. She's brought the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, down to their knees. She's conjured entire beings into existence, her children, and yes, she's even wiped out a few Avengers entirely. Talking about cleaning up the House of M. The nerds will get it. But it doesn't stop there. This chaos magic isn't just something that she picked up in a weekend workshop. No, she was practically born for it. From day one, Wanda had this uncanny knack for magic. Then a little boost from Duran, the old god of chaos, took her powers to a whole new level. And just when you thought that wasn't enough, the experiments at Wundagore Mountain cranked up her magical prowess even further. Think of it like a magical power-up montage. But it's not just about raw power, it's also about the connections she can tap into. Scarlet Witch can channel energy from dimensions and entities that are beyond our understanding. Chthon, Kitterak, Morgan, I got those wrong, probably. These aren't just your friendly neighborhood spirits. And get this, she's even considered the nexus of being for the entire universe. That's like being the fulcrum that balances the cosmic seesaw. Now, sure, Marvel's universe is no stranger to magic users, with Sorcerers Supreme and mystical maestros galore, but what sets Scarlet Witch apart is the scope of her chaos magic. She's a reality warping dynamo, a serious force to be reckoned with, and a one-woman show of astonishing feats. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. It would help out a bunch. At number 9 is Sentry, who's another obvious pick but isn't as well known as some of the other big players on this leaderboard. A hero with the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, a force that transcends the bounds of mere mortals. Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, stands as a unique marvel, and in my humble opinion, even outshines the famed Superman. You see, the Golden Sentry Serum doesn't just bestow upon him the universe's zenith of strength. No, it granted him a constellation of abilities that read like the ultimate wish list. The Sentry surfs through the cosmos faster than light, an interstellar traveler with a teleportation knack that make the Nightcrawler blush. But that's not all, folks. Hold your applause, because his molecule manipulation prowess once toppled the mighty Molecule Man. Photokinesis, his dazzling control over light, isn't just about setting up stellar selfies. He can blaze brighter than the sun, dematerialize at will, and throw incandescent bolts that'll make Iron Man think twice. His psionic might lets him knit Psyche together, tinker with memories, and just casually halt Mjolnir mid-air, no worthiness required. But there's more to that power buffet. Biokinesis, the art of reshaping biology itself. The Sentry has resuscitated himself from the brinks, stitched others' wounds with thought, and even, brace yourself, brought people back from the great beyond. At number 8 is Captain Marvel. Let's talk about an Avenger who's like a cosmic Energizer Bunny on steroids. And I'm not just talking about the old red, white, and blue color scheme. Carol Danvers, known as Captain Marvel, or Carol if you're feeling friendly, is a force to be reckoned with. Picture this, she's minding her business at NASA, probably wearing some seriously cool lab goggles, when fate's like, hey, wanna be a walking energy power station? And the result is an instant energy-fueled superhero package. Let's run down the list of powers, shall we? Super strength? Check. I'm talking lifting an entire celestial, not your typical weightlifting session, mind you. Super stamina, like she could do a 24-hour dance marathon without breaking a sweat. And speaking of sweat, her superhuman durability makes planet-destroying explosions just a minor inconvenience. But wait, there's more. Superhuman agility, reflexes that are so fast, you'd think that she was playing a game of cosmic dodgeball. And let's not forget the healing factor that makes her practically Wolverine on steroids. Sorry, Logan. Carol's got you beat. But her crowning achievement is self-propelled flight at 3 times the speed of sound, even in the vacuum of space. I mean, I could barely keep up with my own thoughts, and she's zipping around the cosmos like she's late for a Kree tea party. And there's also a little thing called precognition. But yeah, she's also basically a cosmic fortune teller, but with a twist. She can randomly anticipate her opponent's moves, like she's playing a game of chess and reading their minds at the same time. So whether or not you're in the I Heart Carol Danvers fan club or not, you gotta hand it to her. She's the kind of superhero who'd make you wonder if the universe had an energy drink before creating her. At number 7 is Luke Cage, a man who transformed from a life of crime into the embodiment of invulnerability and strength. Luke's journey is one that showcases the epitome of transformation from criminal to protector, and even the mayor of the Big Apple. He's like a modern day Hercules, but without the whole mythology thing. The secret sauce here is the bursting process, a super soldier experiment that's like the ultimate makeover, but for your cellular regeneration rate. This process gifted Luke with an ungodly amount of strength, akin to lifting 50 tons. This strength isn't just for show. Thunderclaps? Check. Leaping long distances? Check. Pulling an airplane's brakes like it's a kid's toy? Absolutely check. But the real kicker is his nigh invulnerability, having skin, muscles, and bone tissue tougher than titanium steel. He can also take hits from heavy hitters, surviving smacks from folks that make him look like an underdog. And let's not forget his favorite pastime, surviving falls from skyscrapers like it's just another walk in the park. At number 6 is Black Panther. First of all, let's talk about that suit. Made from vibranium, the strongest metal in the Marvel universe. It also absorbs kinetic energy, making it practically indestructible. But it's not just the suit that makes T'Challa unstoppable. He's got the agility of a panther, the strength of a vibranium-enhanced human, and combat skills that could give even the most skilled martial artists a run for their money. And don't forget about the intellect. The guy's a genius, ruling over Wakanda, a technological wonderland hidden in plain sight. Vibranium-powered tech, healing herbs, you name it, Black Panther's got it all. But it's more than just the gadgets, intellect, and cool moves. T'Challa's got heart, a dedication to his people, and a commitment to justice. He's not just a superhero, he's a king, a symbol, and a reminder that anyone can be a hero no matter the circumstance. At number 5 is Iron Man. Now when it comes to the Avengers, we're talking about a roster filled with some seriously impressive individuals, but among them, there's one iconic figure who stands out. Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. So what makes Iron Man so special? Well, for starters, it's that suit of his. The Mark 20 million, or whatever snazzy number he's up to by now, is a true marvel of engineering. We're talking about a suit that's equipped with all sorts of advanced tech, from repulsor beams that can blast through just about anything, to an array of specialized gadgets that could give James Bond a run for his money. And let's not forget about his nanotech, allowing the suit to form around him at a moment's notice. But it's not just about the suit, it's also about the man inside it, Tony Stark, a brilliant inventor, billionaire, and philanthropist. Now what sets Tony apart isn't just his genius intellect or his snarky one-liners, it's his indomitable spirit. The guy's faced some serious challenges both in and out of the suit, from dealing with his own personal demons to going toe-to-toe with cosmic threats. He's shown time and time again that he's not one to back down. At number 4 is Thor. When the talk shifts to Avengers level threats, one question naturally arises. Can Thor single-handedly vanquish any challenge that befalls Earth? Well, let's find out. Marvel's tapestry of storylines weaves together captivating narratives, and sometimes even Thor needs a breather from Midgard's constant mayhem. Take the Civil War saga for instance. While the epic clash between heroes raged on Earth, Thor was knee-deep in his own Asgardian apocalypse, Ragnarok, making his conspicuous absence a necessity to let the drama unfold. Thor's lineage also reads like a divine who's who, with Odin and Gaia as his progenitors. And let's not forget the boost his dear mother Gaia gave him, elevating his Asgardian powers into uncharted territories. We're talking about the god of strength and thunder here, being capable of locking horns or hammers with cosmic juggernauts. The roster of opponents who felt the force of Mjolnir's might is as extensive as it is impressive. Midgard's Serpent, the Hulk, the Silver Surfer, Gladiator, and even the legendary Hercules have all danced the battle and waltzed with Thor. His endurance seems bottomless, a wellspring of stamina that keeps him going even when the odds stay high and nigh. But even stripped of Mjolnir, when he's just Thor Odin's son, the guy's like a one-man storm. Recent chapters in his comic chronicle have seen him ascend further, Rune King Thor, All-Father Thor, and even donning the mantle of Cosmic Herald for Galactus. It's almost as if Thor keeps snacking power-ups from the cosmic clearance rack. At number 3 is Captain America. Let's talk about a hero who isn't necessarily firing energy beams from their fingertips or manipulating reality itself. It's none other than Captain America. But before we start sizing up his biceps against the lights of cosmic gods and reality-bending mutants, hear me out. Sure, when you think of the Avengers, you might picture Thor summoning thunderstorms or Iron Man donning his high-tech suits, but let's not underestimate the man who wields the vibranium shield with finesse and determination. Captain America, aka Steve Rogers, isn't on top of the power charts, but it's not about the flashy superpowers that make him shine. It's about his unyielding willpower. You see, Steve is the kind of guy who doesn't know the meaning of backing down. He's like the poster child for unwavering resolve, the guy who will take on cosmic threats armed with nothing more than his conviction. See, it's not about the size of the hammer, but the strength behind the swing. And Steve's swing is fueled by his deep belief in what he fights for. At number 2 is Spider-Man. Just like Captain America, Spider-Man wields a power that transcends comic book pages. It's like the literal god tier of popularity. I mean, seriously, Spider-Man is practically the poster child of Marvel Comics. Now sure, he's been knocked down a few times, but the likelihood of him being permanently knocked down and out, about as low as finding someone who doesn't enjoy pizza. At number 1 is the Hulk. It's almost a requirement that the Hulk makes an appearance on this list. The gamma-powered green Goliath has been a force to be reckoned with ever since his debut. Known for his strength, not just your average weightlifting prowess, this guy's strength is set in stone, tied to his anger, which is a bit concerning when you think about it. Hulk's power grows alongside his fury, and it's like he's got an anger management issue with cosmic consequences. He's gone from smashing puny humans to planets, galaxies, and even giving the multiverse a good old shake with his punches. And as always, if there's an Avenger you think I've missed, feel free to let me know down in the comments. This has been AJ with Top 10 Nerd, and I'll catch you in another video. Peace out, nerds.